In the quiet landscape of the human mind, there exists a subtle orchestra of signals that guide every movement, every thought, every emotion, and even the soft ebb and flow of sleep itself. These signals are not shouted commands, nor are they carried by thunderous waves of energy. Instead, they are whispered messages, exchanged between tiny cells that make up the nervous system, and they travel in the form of chemical messengers we call neurotransmitters. To understand neurotransmitters is to enter a world of delicate balance and fine detail, a world in which microscopic signals shape the very essence of who we are. When one thinks about the brain, it is often imagined as a dense mass of tissue, mysterious and powerful, holding the secrets of thought and memory. Yet within this organ lies a vast network of cells called neurons, stretching and weaving into one another like the branches of an ancient forest. Each neuron reaches out with its tendrils, forming countless connections, so that the total number of these tiny junctions exceeds the stars we can see in the night sky. It is in these quiet gaps between neurons, called synapses, that neurotransmitters perform their subtle work. These chemicals drift across infinitesimal spaces, carrying instructions from one cell to another, transforming electrical sparks into chemical whispers that can influence the whole body. The story of neurotransmitters begins with an idea that is at once simple and profound. Our minds, our moods, and our movements are not merely the product of abstract thought, but are rooted in physical processes. Every time you lift your hand, recall a memory, feel a moment of calm, there is a chemical exchange taking place deep within the folds of your brain. These exchanges are not random. They follow precise pathways, using carefully designed molecules to transmit signals with astonishing speed and accuracy. A single neurotransmitter molecule can alter the course of thought, shape the rhythm of the heart, or soothe the restlessness of the body as it drifts into sleep. To appreciate this quiet language, it helps to picture the brain, not as a single organ, but as a living symphony. Imagine each neuron as a musician, capable of producing only a certain kind of sound. Left on its own, the musician's voice may be faint or incomplete, but when joined with others, and when conducted with perfect timing, these voices blend into a full orchestra. The neurotransmitters are the notes carried between them, allowing the musicians to stay in harmony. Without these notes, the orchestra would fall into silence, or worse, into chaos. With them, the music of life plays smoothly, guiding thought and sensation in seamless continuity. The beauty of neurotransmitters lies in their subtlety. Unlike the heart, which beats visibly in the chest, or the lungs, which draw breath with every moment, neurotransmitters are invisible to the naked eye. They cannot be felt directly, nor are they noticed in everyday life. Yet, without them, the simplest of actions would be impossible. Even a small imbalance can change the way a person thinks or feels. A deficiency in one chemical may bring sadness or anxiety, while an excess of another may lead to agitation or restlessness. Still, the brain is resilient, constantly striving for balance, adjusting the levels of these messengers in ways that allow us to adapt to shifting circumstances. It is a humbling thought that something so small can carry such weight. Neurotransmitters are not complex organs or elaborate structures, but simple molecules, many of them made from common substances like amino acids. Their influence, however, is profound. The ability to fall asleep peacefully, to feel joy, to solve problems, to recall the warmth of childhood memories, or to walk steadily across a room, all of these depend on the quiet, unseen work of neurotransmitters. They serve as bridges between thought and action, turning intangible impulses into tangible reality. As one begins to explore the many different kinds of neurotransmitters, it becomes clear that each has its own personality, its own unique role to play. Some, like dopamine, are associated with pleasure and reward, guiding motivation and reinforcing learning. Others, like serotonin, bring calmness and stability, helping to regulate sleep, appetite, and mood. Acetylcholine is deeply involved in memory and muscle movement, while GABA, the brain's natural relaxant, helps to ease tension and promote rest. Glutamate sparks excitement and learning, ensuring that memories take root, while norepinephrine sharpens focus and prepares the body to respond to challenges. Together, they form a palette of signals, blending into the intricate picture of human experience. But before delving into each of these messengers, it is helpful to simply pause and reflect on the wonder of their existence. Every second, trillions of neurotransmitter molecules are being released and received, crossing from one neuron to another in a seamless ballet of communication. These exchanges happen so quickly and so constantly that we are rarely aware of them, yet they form the foundation of all that we think, feel, and do. To drift into sleep is to be guided by their rhythms. To awaken refreshed is to feel their harmony restored. To smile at a memory, or to shed a quiet tear, is to be reminded of their power. The brain, in many ways, is like a vast city, alive with movement and activity. Neurons are its citizens, each one contributing to the life of the whole. The neurotransmitters are the messages sent between them, the letters and words exchanged in countless conversations. Some of these conversations are urgent, demanding immediate response. Others are gentle, guiding the steady maintenance of balance and calm. In all cases, the messages are clear, and they ensure that the city continues to thrive. Without them, the city would fall silent, its streets empty, its energy gone. With them, it pulses with life, adapting to the needs of every moment. This opening reflection is meant to prepare the ground for a deeper journey. As the lecture unfolds, we will meet each of these chemical messengers in turn, learning their roles and their quiet contributions to the human experience. Yet it is important, even now, to hold on to the sense of wonder. The neurotransmitters are not just molecules, they are the essence of life's communication, the silent language of the brain. They are the reason thoughts become action, and why feelings take form. And though they are silent, they are never absent, weaving their threads into every waking moment and every dream-filled night. As you rest and listen, imagine the brain as a calm sea, with neurotransmitters drifting like gentle currents beneath the surface. Each current carries energy and information, flowing smoothly from one shore to another. The sea does not rage, nor does it sleep. It simply moves in quiet cycles, sustaining life with every turn. In the same way, your brain sustains you, with neurotransmitters carrying their whispers across the spaces of your mind. The more we come to understand these silent messengers, the more we recognize how delicate, yet how powerful, their role truly is. And so we begin this journey, slowly and carefully, tracing the hidden pathways of the brain's chemical symphony. In the chapters to come, we will walk among the different messengers, observing their functions and their effects on mood, memory, movement, and health. For now, it is enough to know that within you, right this moment, these messengers are at work, gentle, tireless, and silent, shaping every aspect of your being in ways both profound and serene. 2. Neurons and their connections. To understand the role of neurotransmitters, one must first become familiar with the remarkable cells that depend on them. These cells are the quiet communicators of the nervous system, carrying signals through a vast network that links every part of the body to the brain and back again. Neurons are not like the other cells of the body, which may grow, divide, and function mostly in isolation. Instead, they are designed specifically to connect, to share information, and to create pathways that allow the brain and body to act as one. Each neuron is a thread in an intricate tapestry, and when woven together, they form the living fabric of thought, sensation, and movement. A neuron begins with a cell body, sometimes called the soma, which contains the nucleus, the command center, where genetic information is stored. Surrounding this central hub are dendrites, branching structures that reach outward like the twigs of a tree. These dendrites are the first to receive signals from other neurons. When another cell releases neurotransmitters, it is on the surface of the dendrites that these messages are caught and interpreted. One can imagine the dendrites as delicate antennae, finely tuned to listen for the chemical whispers that pass through the synapses. From the soma, a long, slender extension called the axon stretches outward. This is the pathway along which electrical impulses travel, carrying the neuron's message toward its destination. Some axons are incredibly short, linking nearby cells within the brain, while others are astonishingly long. A single axon in the human body can stretch from the spinal cord down into the toes, carrying its signal across more than a meter of distance. For comparison, in certain animals such as the squid, axons can grow thick and long enough to be studied by the human eye, offering scientists a window into the mysteries of nerve conduction. The axon is not bare. In many neurons, it is wrapped in a protective sheath made of myelin, a fatty substance that insulates the fiber, much like the coating around an electrical wire. This myelin sheath allows the signal to travel faster and more efficiently, jumping in quick bursts between gaps in the insulation called nodes of Ranvier. This clever design ensures that messages are not lost or slowed, but instead reach their targets with remarkable speed. In fact, some signals can travel at over 100 meters per second, a velocity that allows the body to respond almost instantly to changes in the environment. When you touch something hot and withdraw your hand in a flash, it is thanks to this rapid conduction. At the far end of the axon lies the axon terminal, a cluster of small branches that approach but never quite touch the dendrites of the next neuron. Here, the signal must cross a gap known as the synapse. The synapse may be incredibly small, but it is within this space that neurotransmitters perform their essential role. The electrical signal traveling down the axon reaches the terminal, causing tiny sacs filled with neurotransmitters to merge with the cell membrane. The neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic gap, drifting across the divide until they bind with receptors on the dendrites of the neighboring neuron. In this way, the message is passed along, from one cell to the next, in a chain that may involve thousands or millions of connections. It is worth pausing to consider the scale of this process. The human brain is estimated to contain around 86 billion neurons, each forming thousands of connections with others. Altogether, this results in trillions of synapses, a network so complex that it defies simple comprehension. To put this into perspective, the number of stars in our galaxy is fewer than the number of synaptic connections in a single brain. Each of these connections is a site of potential communication, a tiny bridge across which neurotransmitters can carry their signals. And unlike the static wiring of a machine, these connections are dynamic, constantly strengthening, weakening, or even being created anew in response to experience. This capacity for change is called plasticity, and it allows the brain to adapt, to learn, and to heal. The structure of neurons also reflects their variety of functions. Sensory neurons bring information into the brain and spinal cord from the external world, carrying signals of light, sound, touch, and taste. Motor neurons send signals outward, instructing muscles to contract or glands to release their secretions. Interneurons, by far the most numerous, link the sensory and motor pathways, weaving an endless web of internal communication within the central nervous system. Each type of neuron uses neurotransmitters to speak in its own way, ensuring that information flows smoothly and in harmony. Despite their differences, neurons share the same basic principle of communication. An electrical impulse, known as an action potential, travels along the axon. This impulse is generated by the movement of charged ions across the cell membrane, creating a wave of electrical activity that races forward. When the impulse reaches the axon terminal, it cannot leap directly into the next neuron. Instead, it is translated into chemical form through the release of neurotransmitters. The neighboring cell receives these molecules, interprets their signal, and may then generate its own electrical impulse in turn. This elegant conversion between electricity and chemistry lies at the heart of neural communication. It is also important to recognize that not all neurotransmitters carry the same type of message. Some increase the likelihood that the receiving neuron will fire its own impulse. These are excitatory signals, urging the system into action. Others decrease the chance of firing, providing inhibition that calms the system and prevents overstimulation. The interplay of excitation and inhibition is essential. Without balance, the brain could become chaotic, overwhelmed by uncontrolled activity, or fall silent, unable to generate necessary responses. In this way, neurons and their neurotransmitters maintain a dynamic equilibrium, always adjusting to preserve harmony. Beyond the technical details, there is a quiet beauty in this arrangement. Neurons, with their branching dendrites and long axons, resemble living trees, each one rooted in the body and reaching outward in search of connection. Their synapses are like invisible bridges, small but powerful, linking the forest together into a living whole. The neurotransmitters are the birds and winds that carry messages between branches, ensuring that no part of the forest is left in isolation. Through this endless exchange, the brain becomes more than the sum of its parts, a living network capable of thought, memory, and imagination. The story of neurons is thus not only one of biology, but also one of interconnectedness. Each individual cell, fragile and small, depends on countless others to function. No neuron acts entirely on its own. It is only through connection, through the release and reception of neurotransmitters, that they create meaning. In this way, neurons reflect a broader truth. Life itself thrives on communication, on signals exchanged across boundaries, on the constant interplay of sending and receiving. Just as societies depend on language, the brain depends on neurotransmitters to give voice to its countless cells. As you rest and imagine this intricate web, you may picture your brain as a vast city of light. Each neuron is a glowing point, connected by shimmering pathways of communication. Along these pathways, sparks of energy flow, while neurotransmitters carry their messages from one glowing light to the next. The city never sleeps. It hums with activity even in the quietest hours of night, maintaining the rhythm of breath, the beat of the heart, and the patterns of dreams. Within this city, neurons and neurotransmitters work tirelessly, silently shaping every experience of life. This is the foundation upon which the rest of our journey will build. By understanding neurons and their connections, we gain a clearer sense of the stage upon which neurotransmitters act. In the parts that follow, we will look more closely at the specific messengers themselves: dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, GABA, glutamate, and others, each with its own character and influence. But it is here, among the neurons, that the story begins, with cells designed to connect, to share, and to sustain the delicate symphony of the mind. 3. Electrical sparks and chemical bridges. Deep within the intricate landscape of the brain, there is a delicate rhythm that never ceases. Neurons do not sit idle, waiting in silence. They are always poised, always ready to pass along their signals. To achieve this, they rely on a remarkable partnership between two forms of communication: the quick electricity that runs along their fibers and the gentle chemistry that allows them to speak across the small gaps between their branches. This blend of sparks and bridges is what makes the nervous system both fast and flexible. It is what allows us to react in an instant, yet also to learn slowly, shaping new memories over time. The electrical part of this story begins at the surface of the neuron itself. Every cell has a membrane, a thin barrier that separates its inner world from the space outside. But the membrane of a neuron is more than just a wall. It is alive with channels and gates, openings that allow charged particles called ions to move in and out. These ions, mainly sodium, potassium, chloride, and calcium, create differences in electrical charge between the inside and outside of the neuron. At rest, the neuron holds a slight negative charge within, like a quiet tension waiting to be released. This is known as the resting potential, a steady state that primes the cell for action. When a neuron receives enough input from its neighbors, something remarkable happens. Special ion channels in the membrane suddenly open, allowing sodium ions to rush in. This influx flips the electrical charge inside the cell, producing a rapid burst of energy. This burst is called an action potential, and it is the electrical spark that carries the neuron's message down its axon. Once triggered, the action potential does not fade or weaken. It races forward in a wave, always maintaining its strength, until it reaches the far end of the neuron. In this way, neurons can send signals quickly and reliably, no matter how long the journey may be. The speed of this signal can be breathtaking. In some neurons, the action potential travels at a leisurely pace of just a few meters per second, while in others, particularly those wrapped in the insulating myelin sheath, it can reach more than 100 meters per second. This means that a message can travel from the spinal cord to the tips of your fingers almost instantly. It is the reason you can react so swiftly when you touch something sharp or when you catch yourself from falling. Without this rapid electrical system, the body would be slow and clumsy, unable to keep up with the demands of the world. Yet electricity alone cannot complete the conversation between neurons. The action potential travels faithfully down the axon, but when it arrives at the axon terminal, it reaches a dead end. The electrical impulse cannot jump directly into the next neuron. Instead, it must be translated into another form, chemistry. At the terminal, the arrival of the action potential causes tiny sacs filled with neurotransmitters called vesicles to fuse with the membrane. In that moment, the neurotransmitters are released into the narrow space between neurons, the synapse. The synapse is unimaginably small, just a fraction of the width of a human hair. But it is here that the most important bridges are built. Neurotransmitters drift across this gap, carried by nothing more than the forces of diffusion, until they reach the other side. Waiting for them are receptors, specialized proteins, embedded in the membrane of the receiving neuron's dendrites. Each receptor is shaped to recognize only certain neurotransmitters, much like a lock designed for a particular key. When the neurotransmitter binds to its receptor, it triggers a change in the receiving cell, opening ion channels or activating internal processes. In this way, the chemical message is converted back into an electrical one, and the cycle continues. This sequence, electrical spark, chemical release, receptor binding, and new spark, is repeated trillions of times every second in the living brain. It may seem like an elaborate system, yet it carries a profound advantage. By using both electricity and chemistry, the brain gains flexibility. The electrical impulse ensures speed and precision, while the chemical bridge allows for variety and modulation. Neurotransmitters can excite or inhibit, strengthen or weaken, adapt or reshape connections. They make communication not only possible, but endlessly adjustable, giving rise to the complex patterns of thought and behavior that define human experience. There is also a certain elegance in how the brain ensures balance. Once neurotransmitters have done their job, they cannot simply linger in the synapse. If they did, the receiving neuron would be overwhelmed, flooded with signals that never end. Instead, the brain has devised ways to clear them away. Some neurotransmitters are broken down by enzymes, dismantled into smaller parts that can no longer activate receptors. Others are taken back into the releasing neuron through transporter proteins, a process known as reuptake. In both cases, the synapse is reset, ready for the next message. This constant cycle of release, reception, and removal ensures that communication remains sharp and controlled. It is easy to overlook how fragile this balance can be. If neurotransmitters are not released properly, signals may fail to reach their targets. If they are not cleared efficiently, the synapse may become overstimulated. Small changes in this system can ripple outward, affecting mood, memory, movement, and health. This is why so many medicines, from antidepressants to pain relievers, act by influencing neurotransmitters. They may block reuptake, extend the life of the signal, or mimic the action of natural messengers. By adjusting the chemistry of the synapse, these treatments aim to restore harmony to the brain's communication. The interplay of sparks and bridges also provides a foundation for learning and adaptation. When certain pathways are used frequently, the connections between neurons grow stronger. More neurotransmitters may be released, more receptors may be added, or the synapse may become more efficient. This strengthening of communication is what allows us to form memories, to learn new skills, and to adapt to challenges. Conversely, when pathways are used less often, they may weaken, their connections fading. The brain, in this way, is constantly sculpted by experience, shaped by the endless flow of signals across its synapses. As you imagine this process, picture a vast web of lights stretched across a dark sky. Each light is a neuron, glowing softly. From one light to another, sparks of electricity race along slender strands, reaching the edge where they pause, waiting to leap. Instead of jumping directly, tiny glowing particles drift across the space, carrying the spark with them. The next light awakens, and the chain continues. The entire web pulses with energy, shifting and changing, yet always alive with connection. This is the living network within your own brain, working tirelessly in silence, bridging electricity and chemistry in perfect harmony. It is within this partnership that the essence of neurotransmitters becomes clear. They are not isolated chemicals, floating aimlessly, but bridges that complete the circuit of thought. They turn the fleeting spark of an action potential into a meaningful message, ensuring that neurons do not remain solitary voices in the dark, but part of a vast chorus. Without the sparks, the brain would be silent. Without the bridges, it would be fragmented. Together, they create the seamless flow of communication that makes consciousness possible. And so, when you close your eyes and feel the calm of rest, remember that within your mind, this hidden dance of sparks and bridges continues. Electrical impulses race quietly down their pathways, while neurotransmitters drift gently across their tiny gaps. The system is tireless, unceasing, carrying messages of movement, memory, and feeling. It is a reminder that even in stillness, the brain is alive, a silent sea of communication flowing in patterns too vast to see, yet too essential to ignore. 4. Excitatory and inhibitory balance. Within the vast network of the human brain, signals are not only passed from one neuron to another, they are also carefully regulated. If the brain were a simple machine that only pushed messages forward without restraint, the result would be overwhelming noise, an endless storm of activity with no order or rest. On the other hand, if signals were constantly suppressed, the system would fall into silence, unable to act or respond. What keeps the brain alive and meaningful is the balance between two kinds of messages: excitatory signals, which encourage activity, and inhibitory signals, which provide calm and restraint. It is in this delicate balance that the nervous system finds its harmony, sustaining life and shaping thought, emotion, and behavior. Excitatory neurotransmitters are those that increase the likelihood of a neuron firing an action potential. When released into the synapse, they bind to receptors on the receiving neuron and cause ion channels to open in a way that makes the interior of the cell more positively charged. If enough of these excitatory signals accumulate, the neuron reaches its threshold and generates its own action potential. In this sense, excitatory signals act like a gentle push, encouraging the flow of activity across the feed network. Without them, neurons would remain silent, and the brain would be unable to generate thought, motion, or memory. The most common excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain is glutamate. It is the spark that fuels learning, memory, and cognition, activating pathways that strengthen connections between neurons. When glutamate is released, it excites the receiving cell, helping to reinforce communication and create long-lasting changes in the network. In moderation, this is essential. It is how the brain adapts to new experiences, stores knowledge, and shapes behavior. But when excitatory signals are excessive, the results can be harmful. Too much glutamate, for example, can overstimulate neurons, leading to damage or death in a process sometimes called excitotoxicity. This demonstrates that even signals of activation must be carefully controlled, for too much activity can be as harmful as too little. On the other side of the balance are inhibitory neurotransmitters. These are signals that decrease the likelihood of a neuron firing. Instead of making the interior of the cell more positive, they open channels that allow negatively charged ions to flow in or positively charged ions to flow out, stabilizing the cell and keeping it from reaching threshold. Inhibitory signals act like a calming hand, preventing overstimulation and allowing the brain to rest. They do not silence the system entirely, but provide the necessary restraint so that activity remains coordinated and measured. The primary inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain is GABA, short for gamma-aminobutyric acid. GABA acts as the brain's natural tranquilizer, reducing excessive firing and promoting calmness. When GABA binds to its receptors, it opens channels that allow chloride ions to flow into the neuron, making it less likely to fire. This quieting influence is essential for sleep, relaxation, and focus. Without adequate inhibitory signaling, the brain would become overstimulated, leading to anxiety, restlessness, or even seizures. GABA, in this sense, ensures that the orchestra of the brain plays in tempo, preventing any one instrument from overwhelming the others. The interplay of excitation and inhibition is not uniform across the brain. Different regions rely on different balances, depending on their function. In the motor areas, excitatory signals are necessary to initiate movement, while inhibitory signals fine-tune coordination and prevent unwanted actions. In sensory areas, excitatory inputs sharpen the perception of stimuli, while inhibitory inputs filter out noise, allowing the brain to focus on what is most important. In higher cognitive regions, the constant dance between activation and restraint allows for complex processes such as decision-making, planning, and creativity. It is this balance that ensures the brain does not simply react but responds thoughtfully to the world around it. This equilibrium is also reflected in our daily rhythms. During the day, excitatory signals dominate, keeping us alert, focused, and ready to engage with our environment. As night falls, inhibitory signals gradually take precedence, calming the nervous system and preparing the body for rest. The shift from one state to another is not abrupt but a slow transition, guided by the rise and fall of neurotransmitters like glutamate and GABA, as well as other modulators such as serotonin and melatonin. In this way, the balance between excitation and inhibition becomes a reflection of the body's natural cycles, aligning the brain with the rhythms of wakefulness and sleep. When this balance is disturbed, the consequences ripple outward in many ways. An excess of excitatory activity can lead to agitation, insomnia, or even neurological damage. A deficiency in inhibition may result in anxiety, hyperactivity, or seizures. On the other hand, too much inhibition can bring sluggishness, fatigue, or difficulty concentrating. Many disorders of the nervous system can be understood as disruptions in this delicate interplay. The scale tips too far in one direction. Medications designed to treat these conditions often work by restoring balance, enhancing inhibitory signals in cases of overactivity, or boosting excitatory signals when activity is too low. Beyond medicine, daily habits also influence this equilibrium. Stress, for example, often shifts the balance toward excitation, filling the brain with signals that heighten alertness and tension. Relaxation practices such as deep breathing, meditation, or gentle exercise help restore inhibitory control, calming the system. Nutrition plays a role as well, since many neurotransmitters are synthesized from dietary components like amino acids. Sleep, too, is crucial, as it allows the brain to reset its balance, clearing away excess excitatory activity and replenishing inhibitory reserves. Thus, the way we live directly affects the harmony of our neural orchestra. It is soothing to imagine this balance as a scale, with excitation on one side and inhibition on the other. The scale is never perfectly still, but it sways gently, adjusting to the needs of each moment. When activity is required, excitation tips the scale forward, propelling the brain into action. When rest is needed, inhibition pulls it back, ensuring recovery and calm. The brain is always balancing, always adjusting, never rigid but always responsive. This dynamic stability is the essence of healthy function, allowing the mind to remain adaptable yet steady. The balance between excitatory and inhibitory signals also reveals a deeper truth about the brain, that it is not a system of absolutes but of relationships. No single signal, on its own, defines behavior or thought. It is the interplay between opposing forces, the constant negotiation between activation and restraint, that creates meaning. Just as music arises not from individual notes but from the spaces and harmonies between them, the brain's activity arises from the conversation between excitation and inhibition. This conversation is ongoing, subtle, and essential, a dialogue that sustains the quiet miracle of consciousness. As you reflect on this, picture once more the image of the brain as an orchestra. Some instruments play with energy and force, their sounds bright and stirring. Others play softly, their notes gentle and soothing. If only the loud instruments played, the music would be overwhelming, chaotic. If only the soft ones played, the music would fade into silence. But together, in balance, they create harmony, a melody that rises and falls with grace. This is the balance within your own mind, sustained moment by the interplay of excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters, guiding every thought, every movement, every breath. 5. Dopamine, the pathway of reward and movement. Among the many chemical messengers in the brain, dopamine holds a special place. It is often spoken of as the neurotransmitter of pleasure, but this description, though partially true, is far too narrow. Dopamine is not only about fleeting happiness or delight, it is about drive, motivation, learning, and the ability to move with fluid grace. It is about the quiet force that keeps us seeking, striving, and returning to the tasks that matter for survival. Without dopamine, life would lose much of its energy and momentum, for it is the subtle signal that encourages both persistence and reward. To imagine dopamine, one might think of it as a gentle guide, always pointing toward what is rewarding and worth pursuing. When you taste a favorite food, when you hear music that resonates deeply, when you learn something new or accomplish a goal, dopamine is there, releasing its whisper into the synapse. It does not simply make you feel good in the moment. It strengthens the pathway that brought you there, encouraging you to repeat the action. In this way, dopamine is the neurotransmitter of reinforcement. It teaches the brain which actions are worth remembering and which behaviors should be repeated. Over time, this builds habits, both helpful and harmful, shaping the routines of daily life. Dopamine is produced in several key regions of the brain, most notably in clusters of neurons located deep within the midbrain. From there, it travels along distinct pathways, each serving a different purpose. One pathway, stretching to the limbic system, influences emotion and reward, guiding motivation and desire. Another pathway, leading into the frontal cortex, supports attention, planning, and problem solving, helping the mind to focus on long-term goals. Still another pathway extends into the motor areas, where dopamine plays a crucial role in movement. These overlapping circuits reveal dopamine's complexity. It is not tied to one single function, but to many, weaving motivation, learning, and motion into one integrated whole. Consider the experience of learning a new skill. At first, the task may feel unfamiliar and effortful, but as you practice, small bursts of dopamine reinforce each moment of progress, strengthening the neural pathways that allow the action to become smoother and more natural. The more often you practice, the stronger these connections become, until eventually the skill feels almost automatic. This process is not limited to physical skills, like playing an instrument or riding a bicycle. It applies equally to cognitive habits, emotional responses, and even patterns of thought. In this way, dopamine shapes not only what we do, but also who we become. Dopamine's role in pleasure is not about simple enjoyment, but about anticipation. When the brain predicts a reward such as the satisfaction of eating, the joy of social connection, or the success of solving a problem, dopamine levels rise. This creates a sense of wanting, of motivation to act. Interestingly, once the reward is obtained, dopamine levels often drop, sometimes returning to baseline or even below. This means dopamine is not so much about the feeling of having, but about the urge to seek. It is the spark that drives pursuit, the gentle pull that keeps us moving forward in search of fulfillment. Without it, the world might still offer pleasures, but they would lose much of their power to motivate. This insight also explains why dopamine is central to habit formation. When a behavior consistently leads to a reward, dopamine reinforces the connection between the action and its outcome. Over time, even cues that predict the reward, such as the smell of food, the sight of a familiar place, or the sound of a notification, can trigger dopamine release, prompting the brain to anticipate what is coming. This creates powerful loops of behavior that can be both beneficial and destructive. Healthy habits, like exercising or studying, are strengthened by dopamine, but so too are less helpful patterns, such as compulsive checking of devices or reliance on unhealthy substances. In both cases, dopamine acts not as a judge, but as a teacher, marking pathways for repetition. In addition to motivation and learning, dopamine has a vital role in movement. This is most clearly seen in conditions such as Parkinson's disease, where the dopamine-producing neurons in a region called the substantia nigra begin to degenerate. As dopamine levels fall, the smooth coordination of muscle movements becomes disrupted, leading to tremors, stiffness, and difficulty initiating motion. This reveals just how essential dopamine is for physical activity. It is not only a neurotransmitter of seeking and reward, but also of action, ensuring that thoughts translate into graceful movement. When dopamine flows properly, the body moves with ease, and when it falters, even simple tasks become challenging. Low levels of dopamine have been linked to depression, where the lack of motivation and pleasure can leave life feeling empty and unmotivated. On the other hand, Excessive or poorly regulated dopamine activity has been associated with conditions such as schizophrenia, where thoughts and perceptions can become disordered. Attention deficit disorders also involve dopamine pathways, particularly those connected to focus and self-regulation. These examples highlight how delicate the balance of dopamine must be. For both extremes, too little or too much can disrupt the quiet harmony of the mind. It is also fascinating to consider how lifestyle shapes dopamine levels. Activities such as exercise, adequate sleep, balanced nutrition, and meaningful social connection all support healthy dopamine signaling. Exercise, in particular, is known to boost dopamine release, which is one reason it improves mood and focus. Sleep helps reset the system, ensuring that dopamine receptors remain sensitive. Nutritious foods provide the amino acid building blocks from which dopamine is synthesized, and social bonds trigger natural dopamine release that fosters connection and trust. These influences remind us that dopamine is not an isolated chemical but part of a larger rhythm of life, sustained by the choices we make and the environments we inhabit. For many, dopamine is most easily understood through its role in simple pleasures. The satisfaction of completing a task, the delight of laughter, the comfort of familiar music all are accompanied by dopamine's subtle guidance. But beneath these small joys lies a deeper truth. Dopamine is about energy and persistence, the quiet drive to continue living, striving, and creating. It is not only the neurotransmitter of fleeting enjoyment, but of life's ongoing momentum. Without it, the spark of motivation dims, leaving actions unfinished and desires unpursued. With it, even ordinary moments can become filled with vitality, each task infused with the possibility of reward. As you rest and reflect, you may imagine dopamine as a gentle current flowing through the pathways of the brain. It does not roar like a river in flood, but moves quietly, steering thought and action toward what is rewarding and meaningful. It is there when you reach for a glass of water, when you learn a new word, when you smile at a kind gesture. It is the invisible encouragement that keeps you engaged with life. Though it works silently, its influence is profound, for it is the messenger that connects effort with reward, anticipation with fulfillment, thought with movement. In every sense, dopamine is the quiet motivator, the brain's subtle guide along the pathways of reward and motion. 6. Serotonin, the mood and sleep regulator. If dopamine is the quiet spark that urges us to seek and strive, then serotonin is the steady tide that brings calm, stability, and balance to the inner world. While dopamine whispers of anticipation and reward, serotonin speaks more softly of contentment, rest, and emotional grounding. It is not the thrill of a sudden joy, but the gentle glow of well-being that lingers when life feels steady and safe. Serotonin is one of the most studied neurotransmitters, in part because its influence is so broad, touching mood, sleep, appetite, digestion, memory, and even perception. To understand serotonin is to appreciate the brain's need not only for energy and excitement, but also for peace and stability. Serotonin is synthesized from an amino acid called tryptophan, which is obtained from food. This simple fact reminds us that the substances we eat eventually shape the chemistry of our thoughts and feelings. Once tryptophan enters the brain, it is converted into serotonin through a series of enzymatic steps. The resulting neurotransmitter is then stored in vesicles within neurons, ready to be released when needed. Unlike dopamine, which often creates bursts of activity, serotonin tends to act in a more widespread, stabilizing manner, setting the tone of the brain, rather than delivering sharp signals of reward. One of serotonin's most well-known roles is in regulating mood. Low levels of serotonin have been associated with feelings of sadness, irritability, and anxiety, while higher or more balanced levels are linked with calmness, emotional resilience, and a sense of well-being. This is why many antidepressant medications work by altering serotonin levels in the brain, often by preventing its reuptake so that it remains longer in the synapse. Though mood is shaped by many factors, including environment and thought patterns, serotonin provides the chemical foundation upon which emotional balance rests. When serotonin flows steadily, the mind finds it easier to cope with stress, to recover from disappointment, and to experience contentment in simple moments. Beyond mood, serotonin is deeply tied to the rhythms of sleep and wakefulness. During the day, serotonin helps maintain alertness and energy. As night approaches, it becomes a building block for melatonin, the hormone that signals the body it is time to rest. In this way, serotonin connects the cycle of light and darkness to the inner cycle of wake and sleep. A person with steady serotonin levels tends to fall asleep more easily and enjoy more restorative rest, while disruptions in serotonin often manifest as difficulty falling asleep, frequent waking, or restless nights. The calm and stability it provides during waking hours thus extends seamlessly into the quiet rhythms of sleep. Serotonin also influences appetite and digestion, linking the brain's chemistry with the body's needs. A significant portion of serotonin in the body is not found in the brain at all, but in the digestive tract, where it regulates movement and function. This dual presence highlights how interconnected the body and mind truly are. The food we eat provides the raw materials for serotonin production. Serotonin then influences appetite and satisfaction, and the digestive system, in turn, responds to these signals. This loop demonstrates how neurotransmitters like serotonin blur the line between physical and emotional health, tying nourishment and mood into one seamless fabric. Memory and cognition are also gently shaped by serotonin. While not as directly tied to learning as glutamate or acetylcholine, serotonin supports focus and working memory by stabilizing neural circuits. When serotonin levels are balanced, the mind feels clearer, more organized, and less distracted by unnecessary worry. Conversely, when serotonin is low, thoughts may feel scattered, intrusive, or difficult to control. This subtle influence reveals serotonin's role not as the creator of sharp focus, but as the quiet foundation that allows focus to take root. Without stability, even the strongest efforts of attention falter. With it, memory and concentration become more effortless. Serotonin is also intricately involved in perception. Some researchers have suggested that serotonin helps filter sensory input, allowing the brain to prioritize what matters and to soften overwhelming sensations. When serotonin is disrupted, perception may become distorted, with ordinary stimuli appearing overly intense or confusing. This connection explains why certain hallucinogenic substances that alter serotonin receptors profoundly change sensory experience. Though such alterations are not natural states, they remind us that serotonin ordinarily plays a stabilizing role in how we see, hear, and interpret the world around us. The influence of serotonin extends into social behavior as well. People with balanced serotonin levels often describe feeling more connected, empathetic, and cooperative, while low levels can contribute to feelings of isolation or withdrawal. In social animals, including humans, serotonin appears to support bonding, trust, and the ability to live harmoniously within groups. It is, in this sense, not only a chemical of mood, but also of community, guiding the subtle emotions that allow individuals to feel part of a larger whole. It is also important to acknowledge that serotonin does not act alone. It is part of a larger orchestra of neurotransmitters, constantly interacting with dopamine, GABA, norepinephrine, and others. For example, dopamine may drive the pursuit of a goal, while serotonin provides the calm satisfaction once the goal is achieved. GABA may quiet excessive activity, while serotonin steadies the overall emotional tone. These interactions remind us that neurotransmitters cannot be understood in isolation, but only as participants in a larger conversation, each contributing to the balance of the mind. Lifestyle has a profound effect on serotonin levels, which in turn influence how one feels day to day. Sunlight, for instance, increases serotonin production, which is one reason bright days often lift the spirit and why the absence of light in winter can lead to seasonal low moods. Exercise is another natural enhancer, stimulating serotonin release and improving receptor sensitivity, contributing to the calm clarity that often follows physical activity. Diet also plays a key role, as foods rich in tryptophan, such as nuts, seeds, eggs, and certain dairy products, provide the building blocks for serotonin. Even simple practices like spending time in nature, maintaining healthy sleep, or practicing gratitude can gently influence serotonin's steady flow. These daily choices, though small, shape the brain's chemistry in ways that ripple outward into emotion, thought, and health. To imagine serotonin, picture a calm river flowing steadily through a landscape. The river does not rush with violent force, nor does it sit stagnant. It moves at a pace that nourishes everything around it, carrying life to the fields, forests, and valleys through which it passes. When the river flows evenly, the land thrives, plants grow, animals find sustenance, and balance is preserved. But when the river runs low, the land becomes parched and restless, and when it floods, stability is lost. Serotonin is this river within the brain, providing stability, nourishment, and rhythm. It may not be dramatic in its presence, but it is essential in its constancy. In the quiet chemistry of the mind, serotonin provides the foundation for peace. It softens the edges of stress, steadies the rhythms of sleep, balances appetite, and nurtures feelings of connection. Without it, the world can feel jagged, restless, and unstable. With it, life takes on a smoother quality, where challenges feel more manageable and joys more enduring. It is not the thrill of excitement, but the gentle embrace of calm that serotonin offers. It is the neurotransmitter of balance, the mood and sleep regulator, the silent current that sustains the harmony of mind and body alike. 7. Acetylcholine, the messenger of memory and motion. Among the many neurotransmitters that quietly sustain the life of the mind and body, acetylcholine stands as one of the most versatile and essential. It is not always the first messenger people think of, like dopamine with its ties to reward or serotonin with its calming influence. Yet acetylcholine is woven into some of the most fundamental processes of existence. It shapes the way we move, the way we learn, and the way we remember. From the contraction of muscles to the recall of cherished memories, acetylcholine is there, a quiet thread connecting the physical and the mental, the voluntary and the automatic. To understand acetylcholine is to see how the brain and body cooperate, each action tied to a signal that is at once swift, subtle, and indispensable. Acetylcholine was the first neurotransmitter ever discovered, identified in the early 20th century through studies of how nerves stimulate muscles. Its presence was confirmed when scientists observed that stimulating certain nerves released a substance that caused muscle fibers to contract. This discovery opened the door to the field of neurochemistry, revealing that chemical messengers, not just electrical impulses, were responsible for communication between cells. Acetylcholine became the model for understanding how neurotransmitters work, and to this day, it remains one of the most widely studied. The influence of acetylcholine begins at the junctions between nerves and muscles, known as neuromuscular junctions. When a signal travels down a motor neuron and reaches its terminal, acetylcholine is released into the tiny gap where the nerve meets the muscle fiber. Binding to receptors on the muscle, it triggers a cascade of events that cause the muscle to contract. Every deliberate movement, the lifting of a hand, the taking of a step, the turning of the head relies on this process. Without acetylcholine, voluntary motion would cease, and the body would remain motionless. Its role in muscle activity is so vital that even the act of breathing, driven by the contraction of the diaphragm, depends on acetylcholine's signal. But acetylcholine does not stop at movement alone. In the brain, it serves as a messenger of attention and memory. Certain groups of neurons, particularly those in the basal forebrain, release acetylcholine into the cortex and hippocampus, areas deeply involved in learning and recall. Here, acetylcholine enhances the communication between neurons, strengthening synaptic connections and making it easier for new information to be stored. When you focus intently on a book, when you learn a new skill, or when you remember a moment from years past, acetylcholine is present, sharpening the signal and supporting the consolidation of memory. It is, in many ways, the neurotransmitter of learning, turning fleeting experiences into lasting impressions. The decline of acetylcholine in the brain has been strongly associated with certain neurological conditions, most notably Alzheimer's disease. In this condition, the neurons that produce acetylcholine gradually deteriorate, leading to difficulties with memory, learning, and attention. This connection has shaped much of the research into treatments for Alzheimer's, with medications designed to slow the breakdown of acetylcholine in the brain, in the hope of preserving cognitive function. Though such treatments do not cure the disease, they highlight the central role acetylcholine plays in sustaining memory and thought. Beyond cognition, acetylcholine also plays an important role in regulating states of consciousness. It is heavily involved in the sleep-wake cycle, helping to promote alertness during waking hours and influencing the transitions between different stages of sleep. During rapid eye movement, REM sleep, when dreams are most vivid, acetylcholine levels are particularly high. This suggests that acetylcholine not only supports memory during waking life, but may also help shape the processing of memories during sleep, weaving together fragments of experience into coherent stories that play out in dreams. Another fascinating aspect of acetylcholine is its role in the autonomic nervous system, the network that regulates bodily functions beyond conscious control. It is a primary messenger of the parasympathetic branch, which is responsible for rest, digestion, and recovery. When acetylcholine acts in this system, it slows the heart rate, stimulates digestion, and promotes bodily repair. This balance contrasts with the sympathetic system, which uses other messengers to prepare the body for action in times of stress. Acetylcholine thus helps the body find calm, restore energy, and maintain vital processes during moments of rest. Acetylcholine's wide reach also makes it a target for various toxins and medicines. Certain venoms, such as those of some snakes, act by blocking acetylcholine receptors at the neuromuscular junction, leading to paralysis. Conversely, some medical treatments aim to boost acetylcholine activity, either by mimicking its action or by preventing its breakdown. The enzyme acetylcholinesterase normally clears acetylcholine from the synapse after it has sent its signal, but drugs that inhibit this enzyme can prolong acetylcholine's action, making the signal stronger. This principle underlies treatments not only for Alzheimer's disease but also for conditions affecting muscle strength, such as myasthenia gravis. The production of acetylcholine itself depends on simple building blocks, particularly choline, a nutrient found in foods such as eggs, nuts, and certain vegetables. This connection between diet and neurotransmitters once again highlights how the choices made at the table ripple into the chemistry of the brain and body. While the brain synthesizes and regulates acetylcholine carefully, the availability of these raw materials plays a role in maintaining its supply. Thus, the foods that nourish the body also nourish the ability to move, to focus, and to remember. Acetylcholine's story is one of bridges between worlds, the world of the body and the world of the mind, the conscious and the unconscious, the active and the restful. It is the chemical that allows a thought to become a movement, the chemical that turns experience into memory, the chemical that transforms rest into renewal. Its reach is both broad and subtle, spanning from the smallest twitch of a muscle fiber to the most profound act of learning. Without acetylcholine, the world would lose much of its clarity and responsiveness. For it is the messenger that ensures signals are not only sent but also understood and acted upon. To picture acetylcholine, one might imagine it as a gentle key that unlocks doors, not only in the body but also in the mind. Each time a muscle contracts, acetylcholine has turned the key that opens the gate to movement. Each time a memory is stored, it has turned the key that strengthens the pathway between neurons. Each time the body shifts into rest and repair, acetylcholine has opened the way for calm. It is not loud, nor does it call attention to itself, but it is constant, unlocking countless doors every moment of life. As you rest and reflect on the quiet work of neurotransmitters, know that acetylcholine is at work within you even now. It is guiding your muscles as you breathe, steadying your attention as you listen, and shaping the subtle processes that weave your experiences into memory. It is the silent messenger of motion and memory, the bridge between thought and action, the current that carries both learning and rest. Without it, the symphony of the brain and body would falter. With it, life flows forward with clarity, rhythm, and grace. 8. GABA, the brain's natural relaxant. In the symphony of neurotransmitters, there must always be instruments that play softly, tempering the louder voices so the harmony is preserved. Without restraint, the music of the brain would grow chaotic, filled with unending bursts of excitation. For this balance, the nervous system relies heavily on GABA, or gamma-aminobutyric acid. GABA is the brain's principal inhibitory neurotransmitter, the chemical messenger that gently calms overactive neurons and restores quiet when signals grow too strong. If dopamine drives us to seek and serotonin steadies our emotions, GABA ensures the orchestra does not become overwhelmed by its own energy. It is the brain's natural relaxant, the quiet hand that holds back excess, allowing balance and tranquility to return. GABA works primarily by binding to specialized receptors on neurons that, when activated, open channels allowing chloride ions to flow into the cell. This influx makes the neuron more negative inside, moving it further from the threshold needed to fire an action potential. In simple terms, GABA lowers the chance of a neuron sending its signal onward. By doing so, it reduces excessive activity and keeps neural circuits from spiraling into overexcitation. This action is not about silencing the brain completely, but about moderation, about ensuring that signals flow with rhythm rather than chaos. Without GABA, neurons would fire too frequently, and the brain would become restless, anxious, and unstable. The importance of GABA becomes clear when we think of how the body responds to stress. In moments of tension, excitatory neurotransmitters flood the brain, heightening alertness and preparing for action. But if this activation is left unchecked, it can lead to feelings of anxiety or panic. GABA serves as the counterbalance, stepping in to quiet the noise. By calming neural activity, it allows the mind to settle, the body to relax, and the nervous system to recover from strain. This is why GABA is often described as the neurotransmitter of calm, the one most associated with the relief of stress and the promotion of peace. GABA's role is also deeply tied to sleep. As night approaches and the body prepares to rest, GABA activity increases, reducing overall brain activity and making it easier to drift into slumber. It quiets the racing thoughts that can keep the mind awake and allows neural circuits to transition into the slower rhythms of sleep. During deep sleep, GABA continues its work, ensuring that neurons remain less excitable, allowing the brain to restore and the body to repair. Without adequate GABA activity, sleep becomes difficult, shallow, or fragmented. Insomnia, in many cases, can be traced to an imbalance in this calming system. Beyond its influence on sleep and stress, GABA also supports focus and clarity during waking hours. By preventing overstimulation, it helps filter unnecessary signals, allowing attention to remain steady on what matters most. Imagine trying to read in a crowded room filled with voices. Without GABA, the brain would take in every sound equally, overwhelmed by noise. With GABA, irrelevant signals are dampened, background noise fades, and the mind can concentrate. This filtering effect is essential not only for learning and working, but also for maintaining a sense of calm in a world filled with constant stimulation. The balance between GABA and excitatory neurotransmitters, such as glutamate, is one of the most fundamental dynamics in the nervous system. Glutamate excites, strengthening connections and encouraging learning, while GABA restrains, ensuring that activity does not overwhelm. Together, they create a system that is both responsive and stable. When the balance tips too far toward excitation, anxiety, seizures, or agitation can result. When inhibition dominates excessively, drowsiness, sluggishness, or difficulty concentrating may follow. Health lies in the dynamic balance between these two forces, with GABA providing the essential counterweight to the excitatory currents of the brain. Because GABA is so central to calm and balance, many natural and medical approaches to relaxation and anxiety relief involve its pathways. Certain medications, such as benzodiazepines, work by enhancing GABA's effect, binding to its receptors and increasing their calming influence. This produces a sense of relaxation, reduces anxiety, and promotes sleep. However, such medications must be used carefully, as excessive reliance can disrupt the natural balance of the system. There are also natural ways to support healthy GABA activity. Gentle exercise, meditation, deep breathing, and mindfulness practices have all been shown to enhance GABA levels or sensitivity, offering calm through lifestyle as much as through chemistry. Nutrition also plays a role in supporting GABA. Foods rich in specific amino acids, particularly glutamine, provide the building blocks for GABA synthesis. Fermented foods, green tea, and certain herbs have been linked to enhanced GABA activity, showing once again the deep connection between diet and neurotransmitters. Sleep, too, is critical, for it is during rest that the brain resets its inhibitory systems, preparing GABA to maintain balance during waking life. Each of these influences reminds us that GABA is not a remote chemical isolated in the brain, but part of a larger rhythm shaped by daily choices, habits, and environments. The absence of GABA's influence can be profoundly felt. In conditions such as epilepsy, where inhibitory control is insufficient, neurons may fire uncontrollably, producing seizures. In anxiety disorders, reduced GABA activity leaves the brain vulnerable to overactivation, fueling worry and restlessness. In sleep disorders, a lack of GABA can make it difficult to quiet the mind enough for rest. These conditions show the necessity of GABA's calming presence. Without it, the brain's orchestra becomes unbalanced, with excitatory instruments playing too loudly, drowning out the harmony. Yet GABA is not only about preventing extremes, it is also about shaping subtle experiences, allowing moments of stillness and reflection. It is present when you take a slow breath and feel your body relax, when you close your eyes and drift into sleep, when you sit quietly and let thoughts settle like dust falling gently in a sunlit room. It provides the silence between notes, the pauses that give meaning to sound, the calm that makes activity possible. Without silence, music would be endless noise. In its quiet way, GABA gives structure to experience, ensuring that the mind's rhythms rise and fall with grace. To imagine GABA, think of it as a soft twilight falling over a busy landscape. During the day, activity is constant, signals rushing like bright streams of light. But as evening comes, GABA spreads its calming influence, dimming the intensity, slowing the pace, and allowing rest to return. The city does not disappear. It continues quietly, conserving energy and finding peace. This is the work of GABA within the brain, a natural twilight that restores balance and prepares for renewal. As you rest now, GABA is quietly shaping the flow of your thoughts, ensuring that they do not overwhelm you, that they do not rush endlessly, but instead soften and fade into calm. It is the natural relaxant of the brain, the silent guardian of balance, the quiet force that allows wakefulness to give way to sleep and restlessness to yield to peace. In the grand design of neurotransmission, GABA is the gentle reminder that even in a world filled with sparks of energy, there must always be calm currents that soothe, steady, and sustain. 9. Glutamate, the spark of learning. If GABA is the neurotransmitter that quiets the mind and brings calm, then glutamate is its counterpart, the spark that ignites activity and fuels the brain's capacity to think, learn, and remember. Glutamate is the most abundant excitatory neurotransmitter in the human nervous system, responsible for the majority of stimulating signals passed between neurons. It is not dramatic in the way dopamine might be tied to reward or serotonin to mood, yet its importance is profound. Without glutamate, thought would be dull, learning impossible, and memory fleeting. It is the chemical force that drives the very plasticity of the brain, the ability to adapt, to grow, and to form new pathways in response to experience. At its core, glutamate works by binding to receptors on the surface of neurons, opening channels that allow positive ions to flow inside, and making the receiving neuron more likely to fire its own action potential. This excitatory effect spreads activity forward, ensuring that signals travel quickly through networks of neurons. In this way, glutamate acts as a carrier of momentum, sustaining communication across the brain's circuits. But glutamate does more than simply propagate signals. It strengthens them, turning ordinary patterns of firing into enduring connections. This strengthening lies at the heart of what neuroscientists call synaptic plasticity, the ability of synapses to grow stronger or weaker over time. The process of long-term potentiation, often considered the biological basis of learning and memory, depends heavily on glutamate. When two neurons are active at the same time, and glutamate is repeatedly released into their synapse, the connection between them grows stronger. The receiving neuron becomes more sensitive to glutamate, adding more receptors or enhancing their response. As a result, future signals are transmitted more easily. This is how the brain encodes new experiences, solidifying them into lasting memory. From recalling a simple word to mastering a complex skill, glutamate is the silent architect of change, ensuring that practice and repetition reshape the neural landscape. Glutamate's influence extends across nearly every region of the brain. In the cortex, it supports higher cognitive functions, such as reasoning, planning, and decision-making. In the hippocampus, it is central to the formation of new memories, linking experiences into coherent stories that can be recalled later. In the sensory systems, glutamate sharpens perception, amplifying the signals that bring sight, sound. It is, in many ways, the energy of thought itself, the ever-present spark that brings ideas to life. But as with all powerful forces, glutamate's influence must be balanced. Too little glutamate, and the brain becomes sluggish, unable to process information efficiently. Too much, and neurons can become overstimulated, leading to damage or death. This harmful process, known as excitotoxicity, occurs when glutamate levels rise uncontrollably, flooding neurons with ions that disrupt their stability. Excitotoxicity has been implicated in several neurological conditions, including stroke, traumatic brain injury, and certain degenerative diseases. These examples reveal the delicate balance glutamate must maintain, vital for learning and memory, yet dangerous if left unchecked. The relationship between glutamate and GABA reflects this balance. Glutamate excites, while GABA inhibits. Glutamate pushes neurons toward firing, while GABA pulls them back toward rest. Together, they create the ebb and flow of activity that allows the brain to function smoothly. If one imagines the brain as a vast landscape of lights, glutamate is the energy that illuminates new paths, while GABA ensures that the light does not burn too brightly. This partnership ensures both vitality and stability, allowing thought to be both dynamic and safe. Glutamate also plays a role in development, shaping the growth of neural circuits during early life. As the young brain forms, glutamate helps guide the pruning and strengthening of synaptic connections, ensuring that the most useful pathways are preserved. This sculpting process lays the foundation for future cognition, showing that glutamate's influence begins not only in learning, but in the very construction of the brain itself. Even in adulthood, glutamate continues to refine circuits, adapting them to new experiences and challenges. One of the most fascinating aspects of glutamate is its connection to learning environments. When you encounter something new, whether it is a concept, a skill, or even a surprising event, glutamate activity increases in the relevant brain regions. This surge ensures that the moment is encoded, that the novelty of the experience translates into memory. It is why repeated practice, which repeatedly activates glutamate pathways, is so effective for learning. Each repetition reinforces the connections, embedding the knowledge more deeply. Over time, what was once effortful becomes natural, supported by strengthened synapses built with glutamate's guidance. Diet and lifestyle also play subtle roles in regulating glutamate function. Since glutamate is derived from amino acids found in proteins, the foods we consume provide its raw materials, yet the brain's use of glutamate is tightly controlled, with careful regulation to prevent excess. Sleep, exercise, and stress management all influence glutamate activity. Sleep, in particular, helps reset glutamate levels, preventing overstimulation and maintaining balance. This connection explains why learning suffers when sleep is disrupted. Without adequate rest, glutamate cannot function optimally, and the consolidation of memory is impaired. In medicine, glutamate's pathways are of great interest. Drugs that block or modulate glutamate receptors are used to treat conditions ranging from epilepsy to mood disorders. Research into neurodegenerative diseases has also highlighted glutamate's dual nature. Essential for normal function, yet dangerous in excess. Scientists continue to explore how to protect neurons from excitotoxicity while preserving the vital role of glutamate in learning and memory. This ongoing research underscores just how central glutamate is to both health and disease, to growth and decline. To imagine glutamate's role, picture a flame in a lantern. The flame provides light, illuminating what is before you, making it possible to see and act. Without the flame, the world is dark, and nothing can be learned or remembered. But if the flame grows too large and uncontrolled, it can consume the lantern itself, destroying what it was meant to illuminate. Glutamate is this flame, the light of learning, the spark of thought. It must burn brightly enough to reveal the world, but steadily enough to preserve the mind. As you reflect, you might imagine your own brain alive with countless tiny sparks, each one a pulse of glutamate crossing a synapse, lighting up a path of communication. These sparks are not random. They form patterns, strengthening connections with every repetition, weaving the story of who you are. Every skill you have mastered, every word you have learned, every memory you hold, it is the chemical of change, the neurotransmitter that allows the brain not only to exist, but to grow. In the great orchestra of the brain, glutamate plays the notes of vitality and possibility. It is the energy that drives learning, the spark that ignites memory, the force that keeps thought alive and dynamic. Balanced by GABA, tempered by rest, supported by daily life, it ensures that the brain is always capable of adaptation. Without it, the past could not be remembered, and the future could not be imagined. With it, the mind is ever changing, ever learning, ever reaching. Glutamate is the spark of learning, the flame of memory, the light that guides the silent pathways of thought. 10. Norepinephrine. the alert signal. Among the quiet orchestra of the brain's chemical messengers, some are dedicated to calmness and reflection, while others prepare the body and mind for swift action. Norepinephrine, sometimes called noradrenaline, belongs to this second category. It is the neurotransmitter of alertness, sharpening focus, increasing readiness, and attuning the body to changes in the environment. If dopamine drives us to seek and serotonin keeps us steady, norepinephrine is the clear signal that wakes us up to the world, urging us to pay attention, to act decisively, and to respond to challenges. Its influence extends through both brain and body, linking thought with physiology in ways that prepare us for whatever lies ahead. Norepinephrine is produced in several regions of the brain, most prominently in a small but powerful cluster of neurons known as the locus coeruleus. From this tiny center in the brainstem, norepinephrine fibers project widely across the brain, reaching into the cortex, the limbic system, and the spinal cord. This broad reach ensures that norepinephrine can influence attention, emotion, movement, and even the regulation of internal organs. Its effects are not confined to the mind alone but flow into the entire nervous system, creating a unified response when the body encounters change or challenge. When norepinephrine is released in the brain, it acts to heighten alertness. Neurons become more responsive to incoming signals, and networks that handle attention become more finely tuned. In practical terms, this means that norepinephrine helps us concentrate, filter distractions, and remain focused on the task at hand. Imagine reading a book in a quiet room. At first, your attention may drift, but as norepinephrine levels rise, the words become sharper, and the mind locks onto the page. Or picture walking through a forest and hearing a sudden sound in the distance. Norepinephrine ensures that your senses heighten, your body tenses slightly, and your focus shifts immediately toward the source. It is the neurotransmitter that makes attention dynamic, adapting in an instant to what matters most. Norepinephrine is also a key player in the body's response to stress. Together with its hormonal counterpart, adrenaline, it forms part of the fight or flight system, preparing the body to deal with threats. When norepinephrine surges, the heart rate quickens, blood pressure rises, airways expand, and blood flow is redirected toward muscles. In the brain, this surge sharpens focus and speeds reaction time, ensuring that the body and mind are aligned for quick and decisive action. This response is adaptive in moments of real danger, allowing survival in the face of challenges. But in modern life, where stress often comes not from immediate threats but from persistent pressures, norepinephrine can be triggered too often, leaving the body in a state of prolonged readiness that eventually becomes draining. Beyond its role in stress and alertness, norepinephrine also contributes to mood regulation. In balance, it supports energy, enthusiasm, and resilience. Low levels of norepinephrine are associated with fatigue, low motivation, and certain forms of depression, while excessive levels may be linked to anxiety, restlessness, or agitation. This dual influence shows how important it is for norepinephrine to remain in harmony with other neurotransmitters. Too little, and the mind becomes sluggish. Too much, and it becomes overwhelmed. In this way, norepinephrine reveals the fine line between healthy alertness and unhealthy arousal. Cognition, too, is shaped by norepinephrine's presence. It enhances the signal-to-noise ratio in the brain, making relevant signals stronger and irrelevant ones weaker. This means that under the influence of norepinephrine, memory and learning are often improved, particularly for events that are emotionally significant. For instance, people tend to remember vivid details from moments of strong emotion, such as joy, fear, or surprise, because norepinephrine strengthens the encoding of those experiences. While this can be helpful for survival, ensuring important events are remembered, it also explains why traumatic experiences can leave lasting impressions. The norepinephrine surge during those moments helps etch them deeply into memory. The balance between norepinephrine and other neurotransmitters creates a layered pattern of regulation across the brain. While glutamate excites and GABA restrains, norepinephrine adjusts the sensitivity of networks, almost like a volume knob that determines how strongly signals are heard. In calm moments, low levels of norepinephrine keep the system steady and open to broad attention. In moments of urgency, higher levels narrow the focus, ensuring that attention locks onto the most pressing stimulus. This flexible system allows humans to adapt seamlessly to both quiet reflection and sudden demands. Sleep is also touched by norepinephrine's rhythms. During wakefulness, norepinephrine levels remain relatively high, supporting alertness and attention. As the body prepares for sleep, levels fall, allowing calm and rest to take hold. During deep sleep, and particularly during rapid eye movement, REM, sleep, norepinephrine activity is greatly reduced. This decline allows dreaming to occur without constant interruption by the body's alert systems. When norepinephrine is disrupted, sleep can become shallow or fragmented, as the brain remains too alert to fully rest. Once again, we see how neurotransmitters not only guide our wakeful action, but also protect the delicate cycles of rest. Lifestyle influences the natural flow of norepinephrine, just as it does with other messengers. Physical activity increases norepinephrine release, which is one reason exercise leaves people feeling energized and clear-headed. Adequate sleep helps reset its levels, preventing overstimulation. Nutrition, too, plays a role, as norepinephrine is synthesized from the amino acid tyrosine, found in protein-rich foods. Stress management practices such as meditation, breathing exercises, and time in nature help prevent excessive norepinephrine surges, ensuring that alertness does not tip into anxiety. These gentle supports show that norepinephrine, though powerful, responds to the rhythms of daily life and can be nurtured through balance. To visualize norepinephrine, imagine a lighthouse shining across the sea. In calm weather, its light sweeps steadily, illuminating the horizon and guiding ships with clarity. But in stormy seas, the light grows brighter and more urgent, directing attention to immediate dangers. This is norepinephrine within the brain, a guiding beam that ensures awareness, sharpens perception, and signals readiness. Without its light, focus would scatter, and important details might be lost in the fog. With it, the mind becomes alert, attentive, and prepared. As you sit quietly and reflect, norepinephrine is present even now, adjusting your awareness, keeping your senses attuned to your surroundings, yet allowing calm, as long as no urgent signal arrives. It ensures that if something changes, you will notice, and if action is needed, you will respond. It is the neurotransmitter of alertness, of readiness, of the quiet vigilance that protects and guides. Though it often works unseen, its presence shapes every moment of attention, every surge of focus, every quickened breath before action. It is the alert signal of the brain, the silent watchtower that ensures you are always ready to meet the world. 11. Endorphins, nature's gentle pain relievers. In the quiet chemistry of the human brain, there are messengers that excite, others that calm, and still others that sharpen focus or regulate mood. Yet there is another group, softer still, whose role is to ease discomfort and to bring about a sense of well-being in moments of stress or pain. These are the endorphins, the brain's natural pain relievers, small but powerful molecules that soothe the body and mind. The very word endorphin comes from endogenous, meaning from within, and morphine, a medicine long known for its ability to dull pain. Endorphins are, in essence, the body's own internal pharmacy, creating relief without the need for outside substances. Endorphins are part of a larger group of chemicals called neuropeptides, which are small protein-like molecules used by neurons to communicate. Unlike the classic neurotransmitters that act quickly and locally in synapses, neuropeptides often have broader, slower effects, influencing mood and sensation across larger networks. Endorphins are released in response to stress, pain, or vigorous activity. And once they bind to receptors in the brain and spinal cord, they reduce the perception of pain while often producing a gentle feeling of calm or even mild euphoria. This dual action, both numbing discomfort and enhancing well-being, makes them central to the body's ability to cope with challenges. One of the most familiar contexts in which endorphins arise is physical exercise. Many people know of the runner's high, that peculiar state of lightness, clarity, and pleasure that can follow sustained activity. While it is not entirely due to endorphins alone, these natural pain relievers play a significant role. As muscles work and the body exerts itself, stress signals trigger endorphin release, helping to mask the strain and allow the activity to continue. At the same time, the release creates a gentle reward, encouraging the body to seek out movement again in the future. In this way, endorphins link physical exertion with pleasure, reinforcing habits that support health and vitality. But endorphins are not only about exercise. They are also released in response to laughter, music, meditation, and even the warmth of social connection. When you laugh deeply with friends, when you listen to a song that stirs your emotions, when you sit quietly and breathe in a moment of stillness, endorphins may be flowing, bringing comfort and ease. This shows how the brain does not rely on a single pathway to create well-being, but uses many different experiences, physical, emotional, and social, to trigger the release of these gentle messengers. Endorphins thus act as a bridge between body and mind, reminding us that pleasure and relief can be found in many forms of living. The pain-relieving effects of endorphins come from their action on receptors known as opioid receptors, scattered throughout the brain and spinal cord. These receptors normally respond to natural neuropeptides like endorphins, but they are also the sites where certain external substances, such as opiate drugs, exert their effects. This similarity explains why medicines like morphine are so powerful. They mimic the action of the body's own endorphins, binding to the same receptors and producing relief. But while external substances can overwhelm the system, natural endorphins act in balance, rising when needed and receding when their work is done. This natural rhythm allows the body to cope with pain without becoming dependent. Endorphins also play a subtle role in regulating mood. While serotonin provides stability and dopamine sparks motivation, endorphins contribute a softer sense of well-being, often described as contentment or comfort. They help cushion the emotional impact of stress, smoothing over sharp edges of discomfort and providing resilience. When released in balance, they create a background sense of ease that makes challenges feel more manageable. This may be why activities that trigger endorphins, exercise, laughter, music, and even certain kinds of meditation are often recommended as supports for mental health. Their influence is not dramatic, but it is steady, a gentle companion through life's difficulties. The role of endorphins extends even into social behavior. When people gather, share joy, or experience rituals together, endorphins are often released, reinforcing bonds and creating feelings of trust and unity. Anthropologists have suggested that laughter, dancing, and even group singing may have evolved in part because they trigger endorphin release, binding communities more closely together. In this way, endorphins are not only chemicals of relief but also of connection, shaping the subtle pleasures of belonging. Imbalances in the endorphin system can reveal themselves in different ways. Low levels of natural endorphins may contribute to heightened sensitivity to pain or to lower resilience in the face of stress. People who struggle with chronic pain, for example, sometimes show altered endorphin activity, suggesting that their natural systems of relief are not functioning optimally. On the other hand, artificial stimulation of opioid receptors with external substances can create imbalance in the opposite direction, overwhelming the system and leading to dependence. These contrasts highlight the wisdom of the body's natural design, in which endorphins are released only as needed, keeping pain and pleasure in harmony. Lifestyle choices can gently influence the release of endorphins. Regular physical activity is one of the strongest natural triggers, with both aerobic and strength training exercises promoting their release. Laughter, too, is powerful, as is music that moves the emotions. Even small pleasures, like enjoying a favorite food or experiencing the beauty of nature, can enhance endorphin activity. Practices such as mindfulness and meditation also seem to support the system, not by forcing endorphins directly, but by creating the conditions in which calm and ease can arise naturally. In each case, the common thread is that endorphins appear when the body or mind is either challenged or soothed in meaningful ways. To imagine endorphins at work, picture a gentle blanket being drawn across the mind and body during moments of strain. The sharp edges of pain soften, the restlessness of stress eases, and a quiet warmth spreads, reminding you that comfort is possible, even in difficulty. Endorphins do not remove the cause of discomfort, but they alter the experience of it, allowing resilience to shine through. They are the body's way of whispering that all is not lost, that even in the midst of pain, there can be calm and strength. As you reflect, consider how often endorphins are quietly at work in your own life. They are there when you smile after laughter, when you feel peace after exercise, when music stirs your emotions, or when a moment of connection brings comfort. They are the body's natural pain relievers. But they are also more than that. They are the messengers of ease, resilience, and belonging. Without them, life's challenges would feel sharper, more difficult to bear. With them, there is a sense of softness, a reminder that the body and mind contain within themselves the capacity to heal and to endure. In the larger orchestra of neurotransmitters, endorphins are not the ones that drive action or sharpen focus. They are the soothing notes in the background, the steady harmony that reassures and sustains. Their song is not loud, but it is deeply felt, easing both body and mind. They are the gentle companions of the nervous system, nature's quiet gift to help us endure pain, embrace joy, and find comfort in the simple act of living. 12. Neurotransmitters and sleep cycles. As day fades into night, and the body begins to settle, the brain quietly shifts into a new rhythm, one that is just as vital as wakeful thought, but softer, slower, and more mysterious. Sleep is not a simple shutting down of activity, but a carefully orchestrated state, guided by a delicate interplay of neurotransmitters. Each stage of sleep, from the gentle drift of drowsiness to the deep silence of restorative rest and the vivid world of dreaming, depends on chemical signals that rise and fall like tides. These neurotransmitters do not work in isolation. Rather, they weave together, ensuring that sleep is not only possible but also restorative. At the heart of sleep regulation is the balance between wake-promoting neurotransmitters and sleep-promoting ones. During the day, chemicals such as norepinephrine, dopamine, and acetylcholine maintain alertness, attention, and readiness. As night approaches, their activity begins to decline, making room for neurotransmitters that favor rest. Chief among these are serotonin, GABA, and melatonin, each contributing in its own way to the transition from wakefulness to sleep. This gradual shift reflects the natural rhythm of the body's circadian clock, a cycle synchronized to the rising and setting of the Sunday. Serotonin plays a dual role in this process. During the day, it supports wakefulness and mood, keeping energy steady and attention stable. But as light fades, serotonin becomes the raw material for melatonin, the hormone that signals it is time to sleep. This transformation links the presence of light with the rhythms of rest, explaining why exposure to natural sunlight helps regulate healthy sleep patterns and why artificial light at night can disrupt them. Serotonin thus acts as both a stabilizer of mood and a gateway to sleep, ensuring that the day's activity can yield naturally to rest. GABA, the brain's natural relaxant, is another key player in sleep. As evening arrives, GABA activity increases, quieting the excitatory circuits that drive alertness. This calming influence makes it easier for the mind to let go of the day's thoughts and for the body to ease into stillness. GABA promotes not just the onset of sleep but also its depth, helping maintain the slow, restorative rhythms of deep sleep. Without sufficient GABA activity, the mind may remain restless, caught in cycles of worry or alertness that prevent true rest. In this sense, GABA is the gatekeeper of sleep, ensuring that the transition into slumber is smooth and sustained. Acetylcholine, meanwhile, has a complex relationship with sleep. Its levels drop during deep, non-REM sleep, allowing the brain to rest fully. Yet, acetylcholine surges again during REM sleep, the stage in which dreams unfold most vividly. This surge activates the brain almost as if it were awake, even though the body is immobilized. The rise and fall of acetylcholine across the night highlight how sleep is not one uniform state but a cycle, alternating between calm restoration and vivid inner experience. Without acetylcholine's role in REM sleep, dreaming would lose much of its vividness, and memory consolidation would be impaired. Norepinephrine and dopamine, which support alertness during the day, play subtler roles at night. Their activity declines sharply in the early stages of sleep, allowing calm neurotransmitters to dominate. Yet in REM sleep, dopamine activity stirs slightly, possibly contributing to the emotional intensity and vividness of dreams. Norepinephrine, however, remains largely silent during REM, which may be why dreams often lack the sharp focus of waking life, drifting instead into surreal or fluid narratives. This ebb and flow shows how wake-promoting neurotransmitters are not eliminated during sleep but carefully modulated to create a rhythm of alternating rest and activity. The sleep cycle itself unfolds in repeating patterns across the night, typically lasting around 90 minutes each. In the early stages, GABA calms the system, and the body drifts into light sleep. As the cycle deepens, slow-wave sleep emerges, marked by synchronized neural rhythms and supported by strong inhibitory signaling. This stage is deeply restorative, allowing the body to repair tissues, strengthen the immune system, and restore energy. Later in the cycle, acetylcholine rises, and the brain enters REM sleep, where vivid dreams occur and memories are consolidated. The brain cycles through these stages several times during the night, each one guided by the shifting presence of neurotransmitters. The consequences of disruption in these systems are immediately apparent. When serotonin or melatonin pathways are disturbed, falling asleep becomes more difficult, and circadian rhythms drift out of alignment. When GABA activity is insufficient, sleep may be restless or fragmented, with frequent awakenings. If acetylcholine does not surge properly, REM sleep is impaired, and dreaming is altered, often reducing the quality of memory and learning the next day. Each neurotransmitter plays a part in the architecture of sleep, and imbalance in any one can affect the entire pattern. Lifestyle influences this delicate chemistry in profound ways. Exposure to natural light during the day helps regulate serotonin and melatonin, keeping circadian rhythms in sync. Avoiding bright artificial light in the evening allows melatonin to rise naturally, signaling the body that it is time to sleep. Exercise during the day promotes GABA activity, making it easier to relax at night. Balanced nutrition provides the amino acids needed to synthesize neurotransmitters such as serotonin. Even calming evening routines, such as meditation or reading, encourage inhibitory neurotransmitters to rise, preparing the mind for rest. In these ways, daily choices echo into the night, shaping the silent chemistry that governs sleep. The relationship between neurotransmitters and sleep also highlights the unity of body and mind. Emotional stress during the day, which often elevates excitatory neurotransmitters like norepinephrine, can carry over into the night, making it harder to fall asleep. Conversely, restful sleep restores the balance of neurotransmitters, leaving the mind clearer and the emotions steadier in the morning. This reciprocity demonstrates that sleep is not simply an absence of wakefulness, but an active process of renewal, one in which neurotransmitters orchestrate the balance between rest and readiness. To picture this interplay, one might imagine the brain as a great theater. During the day, the stage is bright, filled with actors and activity. As night falls, the lights dim, and GABA gently lowers the curtain, quieting the noise. Behind the scenes, serotonin prepares the stage for rest, transforming into melatonin as darkness deepens. Acetylcholine, like a stagehand, rearranges the scenery, bringing dreams to life during REM. Norepinephrine and dopamine, the directors of alertness, step back, allowing the play of dreams to unfold. The cycle repeats, a performance of alternating calm and activity, until the dawn arrives and the curtain rises once again. As you reflect on sleep, you may feel comfort in knowing that even as you drift into unconsciousness, your brain remains active, guided by the quiet whispers of neurotransmitters. They ensure that rest is not simply stillness, but a dynamic, healing process that prepares you for the day to come. Serotonin, GABA, acetylcholine, dopamine, and norepinephrine each play their part, rising and falling in harmony, carrying you through cycles of renewal. In their balance lies the mystery of sleep, a rhythm that has accompanied every night of human existence, silently shaping the way we heal, dream, and awaken. 13. Neurotransmitters and emotion. Emotions may feel like vast, uncontrollable tides, sweeping over us with joy, sadness, fear, or calm. But beneath these shifting experiences lies the intricate language of neurotransmitters. These silent messengers shape the rise and fall of emotional states, weaving chemical signals into feelings that are both deeply personal and universally human. While no single neurotransmitter can be said to cause an emotion on its own, each contributes to the landscape of feeling, creating balance, intensity, and nuance. The brain does not simply experience emotion, it constructs it moment by moment, guided by the flow of neurotransmitters in harmony with memory, perception, and environment. Dopamine is often called the neurotransmitter of reward, and it plays a central role in emotions tied to motivation and anticipation. When dopamine levels rise in response to a rewarding experience, feelings of pleasure and satisfaction emerge. This is why small moments, like eating a favorite meal, solving a problem, or receiving kindness, can feel uplifting. Dopamine not only reinforces these experiences but also links them to emotion, so that joy becomes associated with certain actions or memories. Yet dopamine is not about happiness alone. It is about wanting, about the pursuit of reward. It fuels excitement and anticipation, emotions that drive us toward goals and shape much of our behavior. Serotonin contributes differently, offering stability rather than excitement. It is deeply tied to emotions of calm, contentment, and resilience. When serotonin levels are balanced, emotions feel steady, and life's challenges are easier to face with composure. When levels fall, sadness, irritability, or anxiety can surface, coloring perception and experience. In this way, serotonin is the anchor of mood, ensuring that emotions do not swing too wildly, but remain grounded. Its influence is quiet, less dramatic than dopamine's bursts of anticipation, but no less important. It is the emotional foundation upon which peace and balance are built. GABA, the brain's calming messenger, plays its part in easing the intensity of emotion. By inhibiting excessive neural activity, GABA prevents emotions from spiraling into overwhelming states. Fear, anger, or excitement, without GABA's moderating influence, could grow uncontrollable, consuming thought and action. Instead, GABA softens the edges, allowing emotions to be felt without overpowering the mind. This is why relaxation, deep breathing, or meditation, which all enhance GABA's activity, often bring emotional relief. They allow the nervous system to reset, calming not only the body but also the emotional waves that rise within it. Norepinephrine, on the other hand, brings intensity. It is tied to alertness and arousal, and it colors emotions with urgency. When norepinephrine surges, emotions like fear, excitement, or stress become heightened, demanding attention. It is the neurotransmitter that prepares the body to act, sharpening awareness and speeding reaction time. In emotional terms, this creates vividness. Moments of strong emotion often feel sharper and more memorable because norepinephrine enhances their impact. While this intensity can be valuable, helping us respond to danger or seize opportunities, it can also contribute to anxiety when levels remain too high, keeping the mind in a constant state of vigilance. Endorphins bring yet another dimension to emotion. These natural pain relievers soften discomfort and create a sense of ease, sometimes even mild euphoria. They are often released in moments of physical stress, but also during laughter, music, or social connection. The emotions tied to endorphins are subtle but profound: comfort, warmth, and resilience. They cushion the rough edges of pain, both physical and emotional, making it easier to endure hardship. They do not erase sorrow or difficulty, but they provide a quiet undercurrent of relief, reminding the mind and body that peace can still be found. Glutamate, the brain's primary excitatory neurotransmitter, contributes to the vividness of emotional memory. By strengthening synaptic connections, glutamate ensures that emotional experiences are not easily forgotten. This is why moments of joy or fear often remain so deeply etched in memory. They were encoded with the help of glutamate's excitatory power. While glutamate itself is not tied to a single emotion, it amplifies the pathways through which emotions are learned and remembered, ensuring that they shape behavior long after the moment has passed. Together, these neurotransmitters create the fabric of emotion. A single moment of joy might involve dopamine fueling anticipation, serotonin providing calm satisfaction, endorphins easing stress, and glutamate encoding the memory. A moment of fear might involve norepinephrine sharpening focus, GABA attempting to soothe the reaction, and glutamate ensuring that the memory of danger is preserved. Emotions are not the product of one messenger but the interplay of many, a constantly shifting balance that shapes how the world feels. This chemistry does not exist in isolation. Emotions are also shaped by thoughts, memories, and social context. Yet, neurotransmitters provide the foundation, the biological signals upon which these higher processes build. They ensure that joy feels energizing, that sadness feels heavy, that calm feels soothing, and that fear feels urgent. Without them, emotions would lose much of their color and intensity, becoming vague and disconnected. With them, emotions are vivid and meaningful, shaping every aspect of human life. The connection between neurotransmitters and emotion also helps explain why daily habits so deeply affect how we feel. Sleep restores neurotransmitter balance, which is why rest makes emotions steadier and more manageable. Exercise stimulates dopamine, endorphins, and serotonin, creating a natural lift in mood. Nutrition provides the building blocks for neurotransmitter synthesis, linking diet to emotional resilience. Social connection triggers dopamine and endorphins, strengthening bonds and promoting feelings of belonging. Even practices like mindfulness or time spent in nature enhance GABA and serotonin, calming emotional turbulence. These influences show how lifestyle choices are not merely external behaviors but internal shifts in the chemistry of emotion. To imagine the role of neurotransmitters in emotion, picture a vast sea. Each neurotransmitter is like a current within the water, flowing in its own direction, with its own strength. When the currents balance, the sea is calm, and emotions flow smoothly, shifting from one to another with grace. When certain currents grow too strong, waves rise, and emotions become overwhelming. When others weaken, the sea grows flat, and emotions lose their vibrancy. The mind, like a ship upon this sea, feels the movement of every current, carried by the balance of neurotransmitters that shape its journey. As you rest and reflect, consider how even now, your emotions are being gently guided by these silent messengers. Dopamine sparks motivation. Serotonin steadies mood. GABA softens intensity. Norepinephrine sharpens focus. Endorphins cushion stress. And glutamate strengthens memory. Together, they create the emotional tone of your life, moment by moment, in ways both subtle and profound. Emotions may seem mysterious, but they are rooted in this silent conversation, a chemical symphony that plays within the brain. In its harmony lies the beauty of being human, the ability to feel, to connect, to remember, and to live with depth. 14. Neurotransmitters and learning. Learning may seem, on the surface, like a purely mental act, an abstract process of acquiring knowledge and skills. Yet beneath the surface, learning is biological, grounded in the chemistry of the brain and the silent messengers that allow neurons to strengthen their bonds with one another. Neurotransmitters are the foundation of this process, the sparks and bridges that turn experience into memory, repetition into mastery, and information into understanding. To learn is to change, and the brain's ability change rests upon the work of neurotransmitters, shaping and reshaping its connections. At the heart of learning lies glutamate, the primary excitatory neurotransmitter. When we encounter something new, glutamate is released in the synapses of the hippocampus and cortex, the regions most closely tied to memory formation. This neurotransmitter does more than transmit a signal. It strengthens it. When two neurons are active together and glutamate floods their synapse, the connection between them becomes stronger, a process known as long-term potentiation. This process means that the next time the same information is encountered, the signal will travel more easily. Repetition, therefore, is not just practice, but the physical strengthening of pathways in the brain, etched by glutamate into circuits of memory. Acetylcholine also plays a critical role in learning, particularly in attention and focus. To learn effectively, the brain must filter out distractions and sharpen its awareness on the task at hand. Acetylcholine supports this by heightening the sensitivity of neurons in the cortex, making them more responsive to relevant signals and less likely to be distracted by irrelevant ones. This sharpening effect allows new information to be encoded more effectively. Without acetylcholine, the brain may still process information, but the impressions would be faint and fleeting, difficult to hold on to. With it, learning becomes clearer, as if a light were shining on the pathways most worth preserving. Dopamine contributes in its own way, reinforcing learning by signaling reward. When a task is completed successfully, when a new idea makes sense, or when a goal is achieved, dopamine is released, providing a subtle sense of satisfaction. This release not only feels good in the moment, but also marks the behavior or knowledge as valuable, encouraging the brain to return to it again. Over time, dopamine creates a cycle of reinforcement, strengthening habits and motivating continued effort. In this way, learning is not only about encoding information, but also about sustaining the motivation to practice and improve. Serotonin's role in learning is quieter, but it provides emotional balance that supports persistence. Without stability, frustration, or discouragement, can easily disrupt the process of learning. Serotonin steadies mood, reducing anxiety and promoting calm focus, which allows the mind to engage more fully with challenges. This emotional resilience is often overlooked, yet it is essential. Learning is not only a matter of cognition, but also of patience, perseverance, and calm, all of which are nurtured by serotonin's steadying influence. Even inhibitory neurotransmitters like GABA play an important role in learning. By restraining excessive neural activity, GABA prevents the brain from becoming overwhelmed by stimulation. This moderation helps the brain focus on what is relevant and discard what is not, allowing meaningful connections to stand out. Without GABA, excitatory signals might flood the system, creating confusion rather than clarity. By providing balance, GABA ensures that learning is efficient, with important signals strengthened and unnecessary ones quieted. Learning is not a single process but a series of stages, each guided by different neurotransmitters. At first, attention must be directed, a stage supported by acetylcholine. Then information must be encoded and strengthened, a task dominated by glutamate. As mastery grows, dopamine reinforces the effort, encouraging practice and repetition. Throughout, serotonin and GABA provide stability and calm, protecting against frustration and overload. These stages repeat again and again in every new skill, every lesson learned, every memory formed. The neurotransmitters act like a team of guides, each stepping forward when needed, each contributing to the larger journey of learning. Sleep also plays a crucial role in consolidating learning, and neurotransmitters are central here as well. During deep non-REM sleep, GABA ensures calm neural activity, allowing memories to settle and strengthen. During REM sleep, acetylcholine rises, activating circuits and helping integrate new information with old. Dopamine and serotonin also contribute by influencing the emotional tone of memories, determining which experiences are prioritized for storage. In this way, the chemistry of learning extends beyond waking life, continuing even in dreams, where neurotransmitters quietly weave the threads of memory into lasting patterns. The impact of neurotransmitters on learning also helps explain why lifestyle influences how well we learn. Exercise boosts dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine, all of which support motivation, balance, and focus. Balanced nutrition provides amino acids needed for neurotransmitter synthesis, ensuring the raw materials for memory and attention are available. Adequate sleep restores neurotransmitter systems, preparing the brain for another day of learning. Stress, on the other hand, can disrupt neurotransmitter balance, flooding the brain with norepinephrine and reducing the calm stability needed for effective learning. These connections show that learning is not only an intellectual act but also a physiological one, shaped by the rhythms of daily life. To imagine neurotransmitters in the process of learning, picture a forest filled with countless paths. Each path represents a connection between neurons. At first, new experiences may create faint trails, barely visible among the trees. But with repetition and practice, neurotransmitters strengthen the trails, clearing them into wider, well-traveled routes. Dopamine marks the rewarding paths, encouraging us to return. Acetylcholine lights the way, keeping us focused on the trail ahead. Glutamate reinforces the steps, pressing them deeper into the earth, while GABA prevents the forest from becoming tangled with too many unnecessary trails. Over time, the forest becomes a living map of experience, with neurotransmitters guiding every step of learning. As you reflect, consider that every word you know, every skill you possess, every memory you hold, has been etched into your brain through the work of these silent messengers. Learning is not simply a matter of will but of biology, a process woven into the chemistry of neurons. Each repetition, each insight, each moment of understanding is marked by the release of neurotransmitters, strengthening the bonds that shape who you are. They are the unseen authors of knowledge, the chemical scribes that write experience into the living fabric of the mind. In the great symphony of neurotransmission, learning is one of the most beautiful themes, a melody carried by glutamate, acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA in harmony. Together, they make it possible not only to remember but to grow, not only to store the past but to prepare for the future. Learning is change, and neurotransmitters are the forces that make change possible. They are the sparks that turn experience into wisdom, ensuring that the mind is never static, but always alive, always adapting, always reaching forward. 15. Movement and coordination. Every gesture of the body, from the smallest twitch of a finger to the most graceful leap, is the result of careful coordination between the brain, the spinal cord, and the muscles they control. Movement may feel effortless, something that happens almost automatically, but behind the ease lies a complex network of signals, a silent symphony of neurotransmitters guiding each contraction and release. These chemical messengers do not simply initiate motion. They ensure it is smooth, balanced, and purposeful. Without them, the body would falter, either locked in rigidity or scattered in uncontrolled activity. To understand movement is to see how neurotransmitters transform thought into action, turning the desire to move into the physical reality of motion. Acetylcholine is at the heart of voluntary movement. At the neuromuscular junction, where nerve meets muscle, acetylcholine is released whenever a motor neuron fires. It crosses the tiny gap and binds to receptors on the muscle fiber, triggering the flow of ions that leads to contraction. This process repeats countless times each second in every muscle of the body, creating not only isolated contractions, but also coordinated patterns that allow walking, speaking, and even breathing. Without acetylcholine, voluntary movement would cease. The body would remain still despite the brain's intentions. Its role is so fundamental that it is involved in every step you take and every breath you draw. Dopamine also plays a crucial role in movement, though its influence is less direct. In the basal ganglia, deep within the brain, dopamine fine-tunes motor commands, smoothing them and making them fluid. Without dopamine's modulation, movements become stiff, hesitant, or jerky. This is most clearly seen in Parkinson's disease, where the neurons that produce dopamine gradually degenerate, leading to tremors, rigidity, and difficulty initiating motion. The presence of dopamine ensures that movements are not only possible but graceful, transforming raw signals into coordinated action. It is dopamine that allows the simple act of reaching for a cup of water to be carried out with precision and fluidity. Glutamate provides the excitatory drive that powers many motor circuits. In the spinal cord and brain, it excites neurons that activate muscles, amplifying signals and ensuring they are strong enough to produce action. Glutamate is essential for initiating movement, providing the spark that sets muscles in motion. But because it is such a powerful excitatory messenger, its activity must be balanced carefully by inhibitory signals. Without this balance, movements would become uncontrolled, muscles firing without restraint, leading to spasms or rigidity. That balance is provided largely by GABA, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. In motor control, GABA ensures that muscles are not activated all at once, but in complementary patterns. When one muscle contracts, another must relax. When one limb moves, the rest of the body must adjust to maintain balance. GABA orchestrates this interplay, restraining unnecessary activity and preventing chaos. It ensures that movement is efficient, coordinated, and adaptive. Without GABA's influence, the brain's motor signals would collide, producing disorder rather than smooth motion. Norepinephrine, though often associated with alertness, also contributes to movement by preparing the body for action. During times of stress or heightened arousal, norepinephrine increases muscle readiness, raises blood flow, and primes the nervous system for rapid responses. It does not direct specific movements but enhances overall coordination by energizing the system. In this way, norepinephrine ensures that the body is not only capable of movement but prepared to act quickly when needed. The cerebellum, the small structure at the base of the brain, is one of the key sites where neurotransmitters shape coordination. Here, excitatory and inhibitory signals constantly interact, fine-tuning posture, balance, and timing. Glutamate excites pathways that initiate adjustments, while GABA restrains and regulates them. Together, they allow the cerebellum to integrate sensory feedback with motor commands, producing movements that are accurate and adaptive. Walking across uneven ground, catching a ball, or even speaking clearly requires the cerebellum's constant adjustments. Guided by the balance of neurotransmitters, movement also depends on the integration of sensory information. Neurotransmitters carry signals from the eyes, ears, and skin into the brain, where they are combined with motor plans to produce coordinated action. When you reach for an object, your eyes provide visual information. Your muscles sense their own position through feedback, and your brain adjusts movement in real time. Neurotransmitters mediate every step of this process, ensuring that perception and action remain aligned. Without this integration, movements would be clumsy, disconnected from the world around them. The role of neurotransmitters in movement is perhaps most striking when their balance is disrupted. In disorders like Huntington's disease, where GABA-producing neurons deteriorate, movements become uncontrolled and involuntary. In Parkinson's disease, where dopamine is depleted, movement becomes slow and rigid. In conditions affecting acetylcholine, such as myasthenia gravis, muscle weakness emerges because the signal from nerve to muscle is impaired. Each of these conditions highlights how essential neurotransmitters are for even the simplest motions. They are not abstract chemicals, but the direct link between intention and action. Lifestyle, too, influences neurotransmitters that guide movement. Exercise stimulates dopamine and acetylcholine pathways, improving coordination and promoting motor learning. Balanced nutrition provides the amino acids and cofactors needed to produce these neurotransmitters. Sleep restores their balance, consolidating motor skills practiced during the day. Stress management ensures that norepinephrine supports movement rather than overwhelming it. These everyday choices, though simple, shape the very chemistry that allows the body to move with ease. To visualize the role of neurotransmitters in movement, imagine a dance. The brain is the choreographer, setting the plan, while neurotransmitters are the dancers themselves, each carrying out its role with precision. Acetylcholine steps forward to initiate action. Dopamine adds grace and flow. Glutamate brings energy. GABA ensures restraint, and norepinephrine adds vigor. Together, they perform the dance of motion, each movement flowing into the next with balance and timing. Without one dancer, the performance falters. With all present, the dance is harmonious and complete. As you reflect, notice how even now, neurotransmitters are guiding the simple rhythm of your breathing, the small adjustments of posture, the subtle movements of the eyes as they scan these words. Each of these motions feels effortless, but each is the result of countless neurotransmitter signals moving through neurons and across synapses. Movement and coordination are not mysteries left to instinct, but carefully constructed acts of chemistry, woven silently into every gesture. They are the bridge between thought and action, the way the inner world of intention becomes the outer world of motion. In the great symphony of the nervous system, movement is one of its most visible melodies, and neurotransmitters are the musicians who bring it to life. They ensure that muscles contract and release in balance, that gestures are smooth, that posture is steady, and that action is aligned with intention. Without them, the body would be frozen or chaotic. With them, it is graceful, adaptive, and alive. Neurotransmitters are the unseen messengers that make movement possible, the silent guides of coordination, the invisible threads weaving thought into action with every step, every breath, and every motion of life. 16. The limbic system and chemical feelings. At the core of the human brain lies a collection of structures, often called the emotional center, the limbic system. While the cortex allows for reasoning and planning, and the brainstem oversees the rhythms of survival, the limbic system sits between them, bridging instinct and thought, chemistry and feeling. It is here that neurotransmitters and neural circuits combine to give rise to the rich tapestry of human emotion, memory, and motivation. The limbic system does not simply generate feelings in isolation. It integrates sensory input, past experiences, and the body's internal state into emotional responses that shape behavior and meaning. Within this system, neurotransmitters are the silent guides, infusing electrical activity with the hues of fear, joy, anger, or love. The limbic system is not a single structure but a network of interconnected regions, including the amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, and parts of the cingulate cortex. Each plays its own role, and each depends on neurotransmitters to carry out its functions. The amygdala is central to the processing of fear and threat, responding rapidly to signals of danger and triggering norepinephrine release to prepare the body for action. The hippocampus, essential for memory, works with glutamate and acetylcholine to encode experiences, while serotonin tempers its activity, preventing memory from being overwhelmed by distress. The hypothalamus regulates bodily states, hunger, thirst, sexual behavior, and stress using neurotransmitters to link emotion with physiology. Together, these structures create what we experience as feeling, each one touched and shaped by chemical messengers. Dopamine plays a particularly powerful role in the limbic system, especially in the circuits, often referred to as the reward pathway. Originating in regions like the ventral tegmental area, dopamine fibers project into the nucleus accumbens, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. These circuits reinforce actions that bring pleasure or satisfaction, linking them to emotion and motivation. When we achieve something meaningful, dopamine not only provides a sense of reward, but also strengthens the emotional memory of the event, encouraging us to seek similar experiences again. This is why joyful or successful moments feel so vivid, and why the anticipation of reward can be just as powerful as its achievement. Serotonin provides a balancing counterpoint within the limbic system. While dopamine excites and motivates, serotonin steadies, ensuring emotions remain grounded. Low serotonin activity in the limbic circuits has been linked with heightened reactivity of the amygdala, resulting in stronger responses to threat or stress. Balanced serotonin, on the other hand, calms the emotional circuitry, allowing feelings of safety, peace, and contentment to emerge. In this way, serotonin moderates the intensity of limbic activity, preventing fear from overwhelming reason or desire from becoming unchecked. GABA, the brain's inhibitory neurotransmitter, is also vital in limbic regulation. By restraining overactivity in the amygdala and hippocampus, GABA prevents emotions from spiraling out of control. This quieting influence is why activities that enhance GABA, such as deep breathing, relaxation, or meditation, often reduce anxiety. Without sufficient GABA, the limbic system becomes restless, producing excessive fear, intrusive thoughts, or racing emotions. Its inhibitory presence ensures that the limbic system signals do not overpower the balance maintained by other brain regions. Glutamate, meanwhile, is essential for encoding emotional memory in the hippocampus. When an event carries strong emotional weight, glutamate strengthens synaptic connections, embedding the memory deeply. This is why highly emotional events, whether joyful or traumatic, are remembered more vividly than neutral ones. Glutamate does not determine whether the emotion is positive or negative, but ensures that the experience is preserved, so the brain can learn from it. In the limbic system, glutamate is the sculptor of emotional memory, carving experiences into lasting impressions. Norepinephrine brings intensity to the limbic system, especially during times of stress. When the amygdala senses threat, norepinephrine floods the system, sharpening perception, speeding memory encoding, and priming the body for rapid response. This heightened state can be life-saving, ensuring quick reactions to danger. But when norepinephrine surges too often, as in chronic stress, the limbic system can become hyperactive, leading to persistent anxiety, intrusive memories, or emotional exhaustion. Norepinephrine thus acts as both protector and agitator, depending on its balance within the system. The hypothalamus, a small but critical part of the limbic network, illustrates how neurotransmitters tie emotion to the body. Using dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, it regulates hunger, thirst, and sexual behavior, linking feelings with physiological needs. It also controls the release of hormones in response to stress, ensuring that neurotransmitters and hormones work together in orchestrating emotional responses. In this way, the hypothalamus reminds us that emotion is never purely mental, but always intertwined with the rhythms of the body. Endorphins, too, have their place in the limbic system. They soften the intensity of pain or stress, creating feelings of comfort and resilience. When laughter arises, or when music stirs the soul, endorphins are often part of the chemistry at work, interacting with limbic structures to create emotional warmth. Their influence highlights how neurotransmitters are not only about survival, but also about creating experiences of joy and connection, enriching human life beyond mere instinct. The limbic system does not work in isolation. It interacts constantly with the prefrontal cortex, where higher reasoning and decision-making reside. Neurotransmitters mediate this dialogue. Dopamine and serotonin connect emotional impulses with rational thought, ensuring that decisions consider both desire and wisdom. GABA tempers impulsive urges from the limbic system, while glutamate strengthens pathways of learning that integrate emotion with understanding. This partnership between limbic emotion and cortical reason allows humans to not only feel, but to reflect on their feelings, to give them meaning, and to guide behavior thoughtfully. Disruptions in neurotransmitter balance within the limbic system often reveal themselves as emotional or psychiatric conditions. Overactive amygdala circuits with low serotonin can lead to anxiety and depression. Dopamine imbalances in reward pathways can contribute to addictive behaviors, where the drive for pleasure overwhelms balance. Reduced GABA activity may heighten emotional reactivity, while excessive glutamate can etch traumatic memories too deeply, contributing to post-traumatic stress. These patterns illustrate how closely feelings depend on chemistry and how subtle shifts in neurotransmitters can reshape emotional life. Lifestyle again plays a role in supporting healthy neurotransmitter activity within the limbic system. Regular exercise increases dopamine and serotonin, creating resilience and balance. Sleep restores GABA and serotonin, preventing overactivation of the amygdala. Nutrition provides amino acids for neurotransmitter synthesis, linking diet with emotional health. Social connection stimulates dopamine and endorphins, strengthening the bonds of trust and belonging. Mindfulness practices enhance GABA and serotonin, quieting overactive emotional circuits. Each of these habits gently nurtures the chemistry of feeling, supporting harmony in the limbic system. To imagine the limbic system, picture a glowing hearth at the center of a home. The flames represent emotion, sometimes warm and steady, sometimes flaring brightly, sometimes smoldering low. The neurotransmitters are the subtle hands tending the fire, adding fuel, calming the flames, or ensuring that they do not burn too wildly. The warmth spreads throughout the house, influencing every room, just as the limbic system's chemistry shapes thought, behavior, and memory. When the fire is balanced, The house is warm and welcoming. When it rages or dwindles, the atmosphere changes. So too with the limbic system. Neurotransmitters guide its fire, ensuring that emotion enriches life without consuming it. As you rest, know that the limbic system is at work within you, quietly blending chemistry and feeling into the experience of being human. Neurotransmitters move through its circuits, shaping fear, joy, love, and memory, weaving them into the story of your life. They are the unseen architects of emotion, the silent messengers that give shape and depth to feeling. Without them, the limbic system would be silent, and emotions would lose their color. With them, life becomes rich, vivid, and profoundly human, carried forward by the gentle flow of chemical feelings. 17. Neurotransmitters and mental health. The chemistry of the brain is delicate, a balance of excitatory and inhibitory signals, of messengers that spark action and those that soothe it. When this balance is disrupted, the effects often reach into the realm of mental health, shaping mood, thought, and perception. Neurotransmitters are not the sole cause of mental health conditions. Life experiences, genetics, and environment all play their part, but they are central contributors, the silent messengers whose presence or absence can tip the mind toward calm stability or toward struggle. To understand mental health, then, is to understand how neurotransmitters work together and how imbalances in their harmony can create suffering. Serotonin is one of the most studied neurotransmitters in relation to mental health. Low levels of serotonin activity have long been linked to depression, anxiety, and irritability. Without sufficient serotonin, emotions may feel raw and unstable. Life may appear darker, and the resilience needed to cope with challenges can fade. Many antidepressant medications are designed to increase serotonin availability, often by blocking its reuptake in the synapse, allowing it to act longer. While serotonin alone does not explain every aspect of mood disorders, its influence on stability and calm is undeniable. It is the chemical foundation upon which emotional resilience often rests. Dopamine, too, has a complex relationship with mental health. When dopamine pathways are underactive, as seen in some forms of depression, motivation declines, and pleasure feels distant. Life may lose its spark, with goals and rewards seeming unattainable. On the other hand, when dopamine activity becomes excessive or dysregulated, as in certain psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia, thoughts and perceptions can lose coherence, and reality itself may feel distorted. This duality shows dopamine's double-edged nature. It is essential for vitality and motivation, but when unbalanced, it can tip the mind into despair or disconnection. Norepinephrine also plays an important role. In balance, it supports energy, alertness, and focus. But when levels are too low, fatigue, lack of concentration, and apathy can result. Conversely, when norepinephrine surges too strongly or too frequently, it fuels anxiety, hypervigilance, and restlessness. Many treatments for mood disorders target norepinephrine alongside serotonin, seeking to restore the harmony between calm stability and energized focus. It is this balance that allows a person to feel both motivated and at peace, able to act without being overwhelmed. GABA, the brain's calming messenger, is deeply tied to conditions of anxiety. When GABA activity is reduced, the brain's excitatory signals may run unchecked, leading to racing thoughts, tension, and restlessness. Enhancing GABA activity often brings relief, softening anxiety, and restoring calm. Many natural relaxation practices, such as meditation and breathing exercises, increase GABA activity naturally, while certain medications mimic or amplify its effect. Without GABA, the nervous system has no break, and mental health is quickly shaken by relentless overactivity. Glutamate, the brain's primary excitatory neurotransmitter, has also emerged as a key player in mental health. Too little glutamate activity can impair learning and memory, contributing to cognitive dullness, often seen in depression. Too much, on the other hand, may fuel excitotoxicity, damaging neurons and contributing to disorders such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Research into treatments for depression has begun to explore glutamate-modulating drugs, seeking ways to rebalance this essential neurotransmitter to restore clarity and vitality. Glutamate's role reminds us that mental health is not only about mood but also about cognition, learning, and adaptation. Endorphins, though often associated with physical pain relief, also play a role in emotional resilience. When endorphin activity is low, stress and discomfort feel sharper, and life may seem harder to endure. Activities that naturally boost endorphins, exercise, laughter, music, and social bonding, are often recommended as supports for mental health. While they may not replace medical treatment, they highlight the natural ways in which the body's chemistry provides comfort and strength, easing the burdens of the mind. The limbic system, the brain's emotional core, relies on these neurotransmitters to shape mental health. In depression, serotonin and dopamine deficits in limbic circuits leave emotions flattened or unstable. In anxiety, reduced GABA and overactive norepinephrine amplify fear signals in the amygdala. In schizophrenia, dopamine and glutamate disruptions distort perception and thought. These conditions remind us that mental health is not separate from biology but woven into it, shaped by the quiet chemistry of the brain's networks. Yet neurotransmitters alone do not tell the whole story. Genetics influence how receptors respond, how enzymes break down neurotransmitters, and how transporters recycle them. Stressful life experiences can alter neurotransmitter systems, sometimes for years, changing the sensitivity of circuits and making resilience harder to achieve. Environment, sleep, diet, and exercise all shape neurotransmitter levels day by day. Mental health, then, emerges from the interplay of biology, experience, and environment, each shaping the chemistry of the mind. Treatment approaches reflect this complexity. Medications that target serotonin, dopamine, or norepinephrine can restore balance, but therapy, lifestyle, and social support also play essential roles. Mindfulness practices increase GABA and serotonin. Exercise boosts dopamine and endorphins. Sleep restores neurotransmitter sensitivity, and social connection stimulates multiple pathways of reward and resilience. These natural supports do not replace treatment when needed, but they highlight how the same messengers that shape mental health can be influenced gently by daily life. To picture the relationship between neurotransmitters and mental health, imagine a finely tuned orchestra. When the instruments are in balance, the music is harmonious, emotions flow naturally, thoughts are clear, and motivation is steady. But when one section plays too loudly or another falls silent, the harmony is lost. The melody may become chaotic, flat, or dissonant. Mental health conditions are like these disruptions, reflections of imbalances in the orchestra of neurotransmitters. The goal of treatment, lifestyle, and healing is not to silence the instruments, but to bring them back into balance, so that the music of the mind may play with grace once again. As you reflect, consider that neurotransmitters are always at work, shaping your mood, thoughts, and perceptions. They are the silent companions of mental health, sustaining balance when harmony is preserved, and signaling distress when imbalance arises. They are not destiny, but they are the foundation upon which well-being is built. In their balance lies the possibility of resilience, stability, and peace. They remind us that mental health is not separate from biology but rooted in it, carried forward by the delicate chemistry of neurotransmission. 18. Neurotransmitters and stress. Stress is a universal part of life, a response that has helped humans and other animals survive for millions of years. At its core, stress is not inherently harmful. It is the body's way of preparing to face challenge, danger, or change. But while short bursts of stress can sharpen focus and mobilize energy, chronic stress wears away at the balance of the body and mind. Behind every stressful moment, neurotransmitters are at work, carrying signals that alter mood, thought, and physiology. They do not simply react passively to stress, they shape its intensity, duration, and effects. To understand stress, therefore, is to understand how neurotransmitters mediate the experience, determining whether it sharpens resilience or erodes well-being. The first neurotransmitter to rise in stressful situations is norepinephrine. Released from neurons in the locus coeruleus, norepinephrine surges through the brain and body, sharpening awareness, increasing heart rate, and raising blood pressure. It is the chemical of alertness, ensuring that the organism is prepared to respond quickly. A sudden sound, an unexpected demand, or a threatening situation will all trigger norepinephrine's release, turning the body into a state of readiness. This surge is adaptive in the short term, heightening focus and giving energy to act. But when norepinephrine remains elevated for too long, as in chronic stress, the body and mind remain on edge, restless and hypervigilant, unable to return to calm. Dopamine also participates in stress, though in a more complex way. In moderate amounts, dopamine rises during stressful challenges, providing motivation and drive to confront the situation. It can make difficult tasks feel achievable, pushing the individual to act. Yet under conditions of prolonged or overwhelming stress, dopamine pathways may become depleted, leaving motivation diminished and reward harder to feel. This explains why long-term stress often leads to burnout, where energy and enthusiasm fade, replaced by exhaustion and apathy. Dopamine's relationship to stress is therefore double-edged. It energizes in short bursts, but falters when the system is strained for too long. Serotonin provides balance during stress, helping to regulate mood and emotional response. Adequate serotonin levels buffer against the emotional impact of stress, making challenges feel manageable and preventing despair. When serotonin is low, however, stress feels heavier, and the ability to cope diminishes. This is one reason chronic stress often contributes to depression and anxiety. As serotonin systems become dysregulated, serotonin acts like an anchor in turbulent seas. When strong, it steadies the mind, but when weakened, the storm feels overwhelming. GABA, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, is another vital player in stress. Its role is to calm overactive circuits, dampening the surge of activity triggered by excitatory messengers. During stress, GABA helps prevent the brain from spiraling into panic, easing tension, and restoring balance. Activities that increase GABA, such as deep breathing, meditation, or physical relaxation, can be powerful antidotes to stress, reminding the nervous system to slow down. Without GABA's influence, stress signals would dominate unchecked, leading to anxiety, sleeplessness, and mental exhaustion. Glutamate, by contrast, heightens during stress, driving excitatory activity in the brain. In small doses, this can sharpen cognition, making the mind more alert and responsive. But if stress is prolonged, excessive glutamate can become harmful, contributing to excitotoxicity and damaging neurons over time. This is one reason chronic stress is linked with cognitive decline, memory problems, and difficulty concentrating. The excitatory force that sharpens thought in the short term becomes destructive when left unbalanced, revealing once again the fine line neurotransmitters must walk. Endorphins also play a role, cushioning the impact of stress. When strain or pain arises, endorphins are released, dulling discomfort and bringing a subtle sense of relief. They do not remove stress but soften its edge, making it easier to endure. This is why activities like laughter, exercise, or social bonding, which stimulate endorphins, often feel restorative in times of stress. They provide the nervous system with natural comfort, counterbalancing the sharpness of tension. The hypothalamus, as part of the limbic system, coordinates the stress response, linking neurotransmitters to hormones. When stress is detected, it signals the release of corticotropin-releasing hormone, which triggers a cascade leading to cortisol, the body's stress hormone. Neurotransmitters such as norepinephrine and serotonin interact with this system, influencing how much cortisol is released and how long it remains elevated. In this way, neurotransmitters are not only participants in stress but regulators of its hormonal pathways, ensuring that the body's chemistry responds in unison. The effects of chronic stress on neurotransmitters are profound. Constant surges of norepinephrine exhaust the body's energy, while dopamine depletion leads to apathy. Serotonin imbalances contribute to depression and anxiety, while glutamate overactivity damages neurons. GABA becomes insufficient to calm the system, and endorphins are released less effectively, leaving pain and discomfort unsoftened. Over time, the balance of neurotransmitters shifts from resilience to vulnerability, and mental health declines. This shows why stress is not just a psychological burden but a biological one, reshaping the chemistry of the brain. Yet neurotransmitters also provide pathways of resilience. Exercise boosts dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, making stress easier to withstand. Mindfulness and breathing practices enhance GABA, calming the nervous system. Sleep restores neurotransmitter balance, ensuring that norepinephrine and serotonin remain regulated. Nutrition provides amino acids for synthesis, supporting the raw materials needed to maintain balance. Social connection triggers dopamine and endorphins, reducing isolation and promoting resilience. These simple practices highlight that neurotransmitter systems are dynamic, always adapting, and capable of restoration when supported. To imagine the role of neurotransmitters in stress, picture a storm at sea. Norepinephrine is the wind, sharp and forceful, driving the waves higher. Glutamate is the crashing surf, powerful and overwhelming. Dopamine is the energy that urges the ship to press forward, but if the storm lasts too long, its fuel begins to run low. Serotonin is the anchor, keeping the vessel steady, while GABA is the ballast, preventing it from tipping over. Endorphins are the warmth below deck, providing comfort against the storm's chill. Together, these forces determine whether the ship weathers the storm or is battered by it. As you reflect, know that neurotransmitters are shaping your own response to stress even now. They rise and fall with every challenge, preparing you, protecting you, and guiding you back to balance. They do not erase stress but transform it, turning overwhelming strain into manageable energy when harmony is preserved. In their balance lies resilience, and in their imbalance lies vulnerability. Neurotransmitters are the silent navigators of stress, the chemical companions that carry the mind through storm and calm alike. 19. Neurotransmitters across the lifespan. The story of neurotransmitters is not static. It unfolds across the span of a lifetime, shifting and adapting as the body grows, matures, and eventually ages. From the earliest moments of development to the twilight of life, neurotransmitters shape the rhythms of growth, learning, movement, mood, and memory. They are not fixed quantities but living processes, rising and falling in harmony with the stages of existence. To look at neurotransmitters across the lifespan is to see how the chemistry of the brain changes with time, supporting the needs of each age and leaving its imprint on the experience of living. In the earliest stage of life, before birth, neurotransmitters are already at work, guiding the growth of the brain. Glutamate, the brain's principal excitatory messenger, plays a key role in sculpting neural circuits, strengthening connections that will form the foundation for learning. GABA, which in adults acts as an inhibitor, has a different role in the developing brain, sometimes acting in excitatory ways to help neurons form and connect. These shifts highlight how neurotransmitters adapt their functions to the needs of the moment, ensuring that the infant brain is flexible and ready for growth. Dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine are also active early on, influencing the development of motor control, emotional regulation, and the first stages of memory. As childhood unfolds, neurotransmitters fuel rapid learning. Glutamate continues to support the strengthening of synapses, allowing children to acquire language. Acetylcholine sharpens attention, helping young minds focus on new experiences and turn them into lasting memories. Dopamine reinforces curiosity, rewarding exploration and discovery with a sense of pleasure. Serotonin provides balance, calming emotional storms, and nurturing resilience. Childhood is thus a time of abundance in neurotransmitter activity, a period when the brain's chemistry is finely tuned for learning, adaptation, and growth. In adolescence, neurotransmitters shift again, contributing to the intensity and transformation of this stage. Dopamine levels fluctuate, making rewards feel more powerful and driving risk-taking and exploration. This heightened dopamine sensitivity is part of why adolescence is often marked by strong emotions, bold choices, and a search for new experiences. Serotonin, meanwhile, may lag behind dopamine in its development, leaving mood regulation less stable and contributing to the emotional turbulence of these years. Norepinephrine rises, sharpening alertness, but also amplifying stress responses. The result is a brain highly responsive to the world, eager for novelty, but sometimes unsteady in balance. These chemical patterns are not flaws but adaptations, preparing adolescents to explore, to separate, and to grow into independence. In adulthood, neurotransmitters often settle into a more stable rhythm. Dopamine continues to drive motivation and reward, though its surges may be less dramatic than in adolescence. Serotonin provides steadiness, supporting mood and emotional balance. Acetylcholine sharpens focus and memory, enabling work, problem-solving, and continued learning. GABA provides calm, helping to manage stress and maintain sleep. Norepinephrine sustains alertness, ensuring readiness for challenges. This balance allows adulthood to be a time of productivity and stability, where neurotransmitters guide both action and reflection. The chemistry of the adult brain is still dynamic, but it often reflects a balance between excitement, calm, novelty, and stability. As the years progress into later adulthood, neurotransmitter systems begin to change. Dopamine levels gradually decline, often leading to reduced motivation, slower movements, and diminished sense of reward. This decline contributes to conditions such as Parkinson's disease, where dopamine-producing neurons in the substantia nigra degenerate, disrupting smooth motion. Serotonin levels may also decrease, sometimes contributing to mood changes or sleep difficulties. Acetylcholine, vital for memory, often declines as well, especially in conditions like Alzheimer's disease, where acetylcholine-producing neurons are among the first to be lost. These changes do not happen suddenly but unfold gradually, reflecting the natural aging of the nervous system. GABA and glutamate, 2. Shift with age. The balance between excitation and inhibition may become less precise, leading to changes in cognition and memory. Excessive glutamate activity can contribute to excitotoxicity, damaging neurons, while diminished GABA activity may make sleep less restorative or increase vulnerability to anxiety. These shifts remind us that aging is not only about decline, but about a gradual reshaping of balance, a recalibration of the brain's chemistry that reflects the passage of time. Endorphins, which provide natural pain relief and a sense of well-being, may also diminish with age. This can leave older adults more sensitive to discomfort and stress. Yet activities that stimulate endorphins, such as gentle exercise, laughter, music, and social connection, remain powerful supports, showing that the body's chemistry can still be nurtured even in later years. Neurotransmitters do not vanish entirely with age. They adapt, sometimes weakening, but still responding to lifestyle, environment, and care. Throughout the lifespan, lifestyle choices play a profound role in shaping neurotransmitter systems. In youth, exposure to enriching environments, supportive relationships, and balanced nutrition strengthens neurotransmitter activity and resilience. In adulthood, practices such as exercise, mindfulness, sleep, and meaningful work support balance and prevent decline. In older age, these same practices continue to sustain neurotransmitter health, slowing the effects of aging and maintaining vitality. The chemistry of the brain may change with time, but it remains responsive to nurture, a living system that reflects both biology and experience. To picture neurotransmitters across the lifespan, imagine a great river flowing from its source to the sea. In infancy, the river is narrow but fast, carving new channels, shaping the land with energy. In childhood, it widens, branching into streams that nourish growth. In adolescence, it surges with power, rushing and unpredictable, testing its strength against obstacles. In adulthood, it flows more evenly, carrying travelers steadily along its course. And in later years, it slows, meandering gracefully toward the sea, still nourishing life along its banks. The river is never the same at any 2 points, yet it is always continuous, always carrying forward. So too are neurotransmitters across the lifespan, shifting in role and rhythm, but always guiding the journey of life. As you reflect, consider how your own brain's chemistry has changed with time. The curiosity of childhood, the intensity of adolescence, the stability of adulthood, and the gentleness of aging, all are shaped by neurotransmitters, silently guiding thought, mood, and motion. They are not fixed but fluid, adapting to each stage, reflecting both nature and nurture. They are the chemical companions of the lifespan, present from the first stirrings of life to the final breath, weaving the continuity of experience across time. The symphony of neurotransmission, integration, and balance. As we come to the close of this exploration of neurotransmitters, it becomes clear that no single chemical messenger can be understood in isolation. Each one plays a role, but their true meaning is revealed only in their integration. Like instruments in an orchestra, neurotransmitters work together, creating harmony when balanced and discord when disrupted. Dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, GABA, glutamate, norepinephrine, endorphins, and many others are not independent forces but interconnected voices, guiding thought, mood, movement, and memory. To grasp their essence is to see the nervous system as a living symphony, one in which balance is everything, and integration is the key to health and vitality. Consider the partnership between glutamate and GABA. Glutamate excites, driving neurons to fire, strengthening connections, and fueling learning. GABA inhibits, quieting circuits, preventing overload, and allowing rest. Neither could sustain the brain alone. With only glutamate, the mind would burn out, overstimulated by ceaseless firing. With only GABA, the mind would sink into silence, unable to act or remember. Together, they create rhythm, the rise and fall of activity, the alternation between wakefulness and sleep, between learning and consolidation, between energy and calm. This balance of excitation and inhibition is the foundation of every thought, every action, every dream. Now imagine the interplay of dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine fuels desire, motivation, and pursuit. It is the spark that urges us to act, to strive, to reach for reward. Serotonin, by contrast, brings stability, calm, and contentment. It is the quiet satisfaction that follows effort, the peace that steadies emotion. When dopamine and serotonin are balanced, life feels rich with both vitality and ease, with both excitement and rest. When dopamine surges without serotonin's balance, the pursuit may become restless or compulsive. When serotonin dominates without dopamine's spark, life may feel flat, lacking energy or anticipation. The harmony between these two messengers reflects the balance between striving and being, between doing and simply existing. Acetylcholine and dopamine form another partnership, particularly in movement and learning. Acetylcholine sharpens focus, heightens sensitivity, and supports memory, ensuring that new experiences are encoded clearly. Dopamine provides reinforcement, marking successes with reward, encouraging repetition. In the motor system, acetylcholine triggers muscle contractions, while dopamine smooths and coordinates motion, preventing stiffness or hesitation. Without acetylcholine, signals would falter, movements weak, or memories faint. Without dopamine, actions would be jerky, motivation absent, learning unrewarded. Together, they transform experience into growth and thought into action, guiding both the mind and body with precision. Norepinephrine and GABA represent yet another contrast: arousal and calm. Norepinephrine sharpens attention, energizes the body, and prepares it for challenge. GABA restrains, restores calm, and ensures recovery. When norepinephrine surges in response to danger, GABA is there afterward to bring balance back, allowing the system to reset. Without norepinephrine, life would lack energy, and dangers might go unnoticed. Without GABA, life would be constant vigilance, with no rest or peace. Their interaction allows humans to respond to challenges with strength, then return to calm, ready to face the next moment with resilience. Endorphins, meanwhile, add depth to this balance, softening pain and stress, reminding the system that comfort is possible even in difficulty. They interact with dopamine in the experience of pleasure, with serotonin in resilience, and with GABA in calm. They are not loud or dramatic, but their presence ensures that suffering is eased, that joy is deepened, and that connection feels warm and safe. Their role is like the gentle harmony beneath the melody, easy to overlook but essential to the fullness of the music. These neurotransmitters, then, are not separate threads but a woven fabric, each strand adding strength and color to the whole. Mental health, learning, movement, memory, sleep, and emotion all emerge not from one messenger but from their integration. Imbalance disrupts the harmony, leading to illness or struggle. Too little dopamine brings apathy. Too much, disordered thought. Too little serotonin leaves mood unstable. Too much glutamate creates excitotoxicity. When balance falters, the task of the nervous system is not to silence or exaggerate any one note, but to bring them into alignment, into the quiet beauty of harmony. This symphony is not static but dynamic, shifting across moments and lifetimes. In childhood, neurotransmitters surge, fueling growth and curiosity. In adolescence, dopamine and norepinephrine amplify, driving exploration and risk. In adulthood, stability emerges, with serotonin and acetylcholine balancing motivation and reflection. In aging, neurotransmitters decline, yet the harmony can still be sustained through care, lifestyle, and resilience. The music changes, but it never ceases, carrying the individual through the stages of life. Lifestyle choices act like the conductor of this orchestra, guiding its tempo and balance. Exercise boosts dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, and endorphins, enriching motivation, calm, and well-being. Sleep restores balance, replenishing neurotransmitter reserves, ensuring harmony in the next day's activity. Nutrition provides the building blocks, the amino acids and cofactors needed for synthesis. Social connection stimulates dopamine and endorphins, weaving bonds of trust and joy. Mindfulness and meditation enhance GABA and serotonin, steadying the rhythm of the orchestra. Each choice, though small, shapes the music, guiding the symphony of neurotransmission toward health or imbalance. To imagine neurotransmission as a symphony is to see its beauty more clearly. Picture a vast orchestra in a great hall. Glutamate plays the bright violins, fast and energetic, filling the air with sparks of sound. GABA answers with the low, steady bass, grounding the music in calm rhythm. Dopamine is the trumpet, bold and motivating, urging the melody forward. Serotonin is the cello, deep and steady, providing warmth and stability. Acetylcholine is the flute, sharp and clear, carrying detail and focus. Norepinephrine is the drum, striking with urgency, demanding attention. Endorphins are the soft harp in the background, soothing, comforting, easing the strain. Alone, each voice is incomplete. Together, they create music as vast and complex as the human mind. As you rest and reflect, know that this symphony is playing within you even now. Every thought, every emotion, every breath is part of its melody. Neurotransmitters move silently across synapses, their whispers combining into the grand harmony of consciousness. They do not seek recognition, but without them, life would lose its rhythm, its depth, its music. They are the silent messengers, the chemical musicians, the hidden orchestra of the brain. In their balance lies health, in their harmony lies peace, and in their integration lies the wonder of what it means to be human.